Welcome to the Tennessee Valley Football Podcast. My name is Clint Guffey.
And I'm Nathan McLaughlin.
We're just a couple local college kids from the Huntsville metropolitan area talking about high school, NFL, and college football and our expertise opinions, quote-unquote expertise.
Just talking about all of it. I mean, it's kind of nice to, just have an outlet to kind of discuss football as fans and as people that just kind of love the game of football, just watch it all the time. And, there's a lot of people that really like football and know a lot of stuff, and then there's a lot of people that only like Alabama or only like Auburn or only like the high school team that they cheer for.
Or you also get a lot of people that don't like the NFL as well.
Yep, absolutely. So we just kind of cover all three of it. I know this on first episode we don't have much high school to talk about. The high school season's been over for about over a month now, but we've got a lot of college and a lot of NFL news to talk about. A whole lot of it.
So, what's your first take on Bama getting pummeled by good old Dabo?
Yeah. So Bama got beat up.
Very uncharacteristic. Like
I mean,
that is the worst beating Saban's ever taken.
At Alabama, yeah. I mean, Alabama's never lost a game by more than 14 points under Nick Saban.
And the last team to do that to Alabama was Nick Saban at LSU.
Yep. And, they just got pummeled. I mean, it looked bad from the first place because before the game, the thing that I was really scared about was I was like, the one thing that Tua has not done well with, and, by the way, Jalen Hurts going into that game wouldn't have solved anything. They were going to get trounced regardless. They were not winning the battle up front against 4 first-round talents. I mean, well, I say 4 first-round talents. Dexter Lawrence wasn't in the game, but, I mean, there's 3 genuine first-round draft picks on that defensive line. And Brent Venables likes to blitz a lot. So the one thing that I was really worried about was Tua getting blitzed and getting pressured. And he got pressured a lot in the game. And then, midway through the game, you had a bunch of Alabama fans saying, well, they need to go to Jalen because Tua sucks. And it's Tua only scored 48 total touchdowns this year and had over 4,000 total yards, like unheard of at Alabama. And, now you're going to say he sucks just because he's having one bad game.
Not to mention he was getting hit in the mouth a lot.
A lot.
That team I did not see the urgency.
I mean, there was – like if Deontay Brown was in at left guard, it probably would have made a tiny bit of difference. They were still probably going to get whooped up front all night long regardless. But, I mean, with Lester Cotton in there, it's not necessarily a shot because, I mean, anybody that plays at Alabama is pretty good. But Lester Cotton is not a very good offensive lineman compared to the other 4 that were on that team. And, Piers Baker can only do so much without they're having to help Lester Cotton out, This was the thing that they were talking about throughout the year is that, Cornbread Brown went in and they were just moving the ball left and right. Well, when Cornbread Brown was out and, Lester Cotton was having to come in, they were having to help Lester Cotton out because he was not getting any push in the run game. Jonah Williams would either have to help him out or Ross Pierce-Baker would have to help him out or, whatever, and Alex Leatherwood and, Jedrick Wills will probably be a guy that'll probably go in the first round here in a year or two. I think Jedrick Wills is a pretty good guy, even though he was jumping, he was false starting left and right in the playoffs, but he's a good talent, and Jonah Williams deserves to go in the first round. He has been a stalwart. One of my favorite offensive linemen in the Saban era is definitely Jonah Williams.
Even Trevor Lawrence, if he was getting pressured like that, or even Tom Brady, if you're getting hit a lot and you're getting pressured, doesn't matter who's in your face. And there was somebody blitzing. It seemed like every play, you're going to play differently.
Play.
I mean, even Phillip Rivers is not going to. Is going to affect you, and I think they called it a dog blitz. It's whenever, when Bama would motion out a receiver, that guy that was supposed to be covering him would stay, and he would blitz off that motion. And I think whenever Tua got hit real low, I think that was one of those dog blitzes because the receiver motioned out, and then Tua never saw the dude get hit.
Yeah, I mean, there was just it was just an all around not a very good offensive effort. And then the defense,
I just don't think it was a very good coaching plan going into it.
the defense, and that's the big thing that we've been talking about. That like I told you about yesterday, I had just found out yesterday, and if anybody's listening, and if they kind of knew this. I just found out yesterday that apparently Tosh Lapoy was not even calling the defense. Like halfway through the season, he got it taken away from him and was pretty much fully replaced by Pete Golding as the defensive play caller. Now, that's because, and I had concerns about Lapoy. I was ecstatic about Lapoy being promoted because I like Lapoy as a coach.
He's a good recruiter, right?
And he's an ace recruiter, but I was worried about it when Saban and Lapoy both came out and said he doesn't know that much about the secondary. Like he's not as good on all positional levels of the defense. And I was like, and you got this guy trying to call a defense? So that's why they hired Pete Golding away from Texas San Antonio in the first place, because Pete Golding was the defensive coordinator there, and they had like a top 5 or top 10 defense. And I don't know if you remember, but last year's draft, the Saints drafted Marcus Davenport, who was a defensive end from UTSA. He wasn't coached up by Pete Golding necessarily, because Pete Golding was a safeties coach and defensive coordinator, but he's part of Pete Golding's defense, and he gets drafted in the first round out of Texas San Antonio. I mean, really? So he's an outstanding fast riser in the defensive ranks. But if he really was calling the defense that second half of the year, I'll tell you this much: it doesn't matter who was calling that defense. Had Quinnen Williams not been on that team, that would not have been a top 15 defense. That would have been a defense in the 40s or 50s at best.
And that was the worst defense Saban's, other than probably the 7-6 team, which was not a product of Saban.
Yeah, much not.
That was the leftover from Shula.
Not to mention that's Kevin Steele as defensive coordinator. That first, I think that first season was Kevin Steele. And then I think the second year, Kirby Smart and Kevin Steele were like co-defensive coordinators. And by 2009, Kevin Steele was just out of town because Kevin Steele has had this resurgence or whatever with Auburn, but he's never been just a great defensive coordinator. He's always been steady to good, but he has never been great. And then all of a sudden at Auburn, he became great. But then they took a step back this year because they're 45th in total defense here at the end of the year. So, but other than that, this was not a good defense. They were just positionally were out, and you could tell it from the Louisville game. The Louisville game, Louisville only scored 14 points and didn't really perform very well. But how many times during that game was the running back left wide open with nobody within 20 yards?
Well, see, I didn't get to watch that game. That was whenever I was on my surfing trip.
That's right. The running back was wide open during that game probably 5 or 6 times, and nobody within 20 yards. And whatever his name is, Jawan Pass would toss the ball to him, and he would just go for 20 yards because nobody would be around him. That's why Jawan Pass had 260 passing yards against us, but they didn't run the ball at all.
See, the thing that I always back up a second, where for the listeners, where did you hear that when Tosh Lapoy got stripped of his duties?
So it was on an article by AL.com. I don't remember who the article's writer was. It might have been Michael Casagrande or somebody, but apparently it was just a report. It was a report that was coming out from multiple sources that said that Lapoy had already been relieved of play calling duties, and he was still heavily involved in defensive game planning, but the calling plays had been shifted to Pete Golding, definitely by the playoffs, but some people say that as soon as October, Pete Golding was calling the defense.
See, in the Missouri game, they play defense, I think, picked up the slack because I think that was when Tua first got hurt, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was when. Yeah, that was. I think when Tua was, we started thinking he might be, a little bit more banged up than we realized.
And the defense stepped up because Missouri had a pretty good offense, and Saban was. I mean, they gave up 10 points, but
yeah, Derek Dooley surprised a lot of people. He was a great offensive coordinator this year for Missouri. Just because he wasn't a good Tennessee head coach doesn't mean that he's not a good coach.
Some guys are just not meant to be head coaches.
Exactly, and I think he was also just kind of thrust into a situation at Tennessee that was kind of a no-win because Lane Kiffin had just left, and they just kind of needed somebody. But he performed well at Missouri this year. And but you're right. I mean, the defense kind of picked up the slack in that game.
They did in November too, with when we played Mississippi State and LSU.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely against Mississippi State. LSU, LSU, we were still pretty much moving the ball.
We were.
But, I mean, the defense obviously shut them out, because, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is not that great of a quarterback. He's no better than Mettenberger or, any graduate transfer that they've gotten in there that's just kind of performed average. They talked Joe Burrow up like he had just lost the job at Ohio State, but he could start anywhere in the country, and that's just not true. Joe Burrow is a Danny Etling. He's a Danny Etling with a little more fortitude, a little less mobility, but a little better arm strength. But it's another Danny Etling clone. I mean, Danny Etling was terrible at Purdue, and then all of a sudden he went to LSU, and everybody thought he was going to be something great, and he just wasn't.
I don't understand why LSU LSU doesn't have always a better quarterback. I mean, I don't know if it's just because they recruit only in the state of LSU, it seems like.
I don't know. I think they try to. Like they recruited some 4-star quarterbacks or whatever, like Lowell Narcisse that just left.
They recruited – is it Talia? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah, Talia.
They really recruited him, and everybody thought
they tried to, but it's like Tua said earlier this year. I think Galu, the dad, he makes the decisions in the family because that's kind of their Samoan heritage. They, is from a top down, like the man of the family kind of makes their decisions for them. So I think he is the one that probably made the decisions for them. So there's probably no real threat of Talia leaving, but you never know. I mean, there could have been a possibility. They're going to go after him and recruit him, obviously, because it's the Hawaiian punch effect.
Mm-hmm.
You got all these great Hawaiian quarterbacks that are coming out. You have Marcus Mariota, and now you've got
Tua.
You got Tua. You've got his younger brother. Which now, do we know if he's going to be a great college quarterback? We don't, but
that Ole Miss quarterback
very
is
possible.
The Ta'amu.
Jordan Ta'amu.
He's from Hawaii,
and then Mackenzie Milton from UCF is from Hawaii as well. They've got a lot of great quarterbacks coming out of that state, but they kind of, it used to be that it was the Hawaii college that was producing great quarterbacks because June Jones used to be there and they ran the run and shoot offense, and they'd have like Colt Brennan throwing for 58 touchdowns in a year. And then they had a guy before him named Timmy Chang that threw for a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards, and he started for like 3 or 4 years there and just became a prolific passer.
Seemed like Colt Brennan played there for he just graduated like 2013.
Yeah. Kind of like Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was there for a while. I know he was like at least a 3-year starter, 05 through 07. Yeah. I think he started, but they were doing great in 07, and then they just hit a brick wall against Georgia, I think in the Sugar Bowl, or something like that. But
they really never recovered from. I mean, they haven't been like. I could be completely wrong, but I mean, you don't see them talked about as much.
Yeah, they never really fully recovered from that one because June Jones left after 07 and went to SMU, and they just kind of fell off the map since then. They've got a guy named Nick Rolovich there now that I think he's led them to 2 bowl games in the past 3 years, which is pretty good for them considering they were pretty much in the tank. But I think they're kind of picking back up because they've started running that kind of run and shoot offense again because that's just what Hawaii's known for. And they've got a guy there, Cole McDonald, that nobody talks about that threw for a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards this year. I mean, he had, I think, over 40 total touchdowns, over 4,000 total yards of offense, kind of like Tua. I mean, he was prolific, especially there early on in the year. He had like 7 touchdowns in a game, I believe, and he's a pretty good one, but he got hurt a lot towards the end of the year, and they just kind of fell off the map. But Cole McDonald is a guy to really watch out for because I really think that he's going to tear up the stat sheet if he can stay healthy because towards the end of the year is when he started.
Is he a native?
I'm not too sure, to be honest. I don't know if he's from California or if he's from Hawaii. He's one of the two. I don't think he's from anywhere else.
Well, see, the reason I ask is it almost seems like the Hawaiian quarterbacks can't stay healthy.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. But I think it's also just because, they just throw. I understand, it's probably the Tua effect or whatever. But,
well, not even the Tua effect. Talking about Mariota in the league, like It seems like he. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's not a knock at Tua or anybody from Hawaii. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, maybe it's just a luck thing because I know Mackenzie Milton was just a freak accident.
Yeah, you can't do anything about that. I mean, Tamu, I don't think he got hurt this year.
And Tamu, I don't think he's even been hurt.
But he's a physical specimen.
He is. He's a big dude, and that's what people were talking about. When Shea Patterson got hurt that one year and Tamu took over.
Yeah, he lit it up.
Tamu is a better quarterback than Patterson is, in my opinion. Now, you might not have Mel Kiper and Todd McShay saying that, but I'm saying it because Shea Patterson, I think, is highly overrated. He was a 5-star, like one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the nation. I think he was the top quarterback in the nation when he committed to Ole Miss, and he's not that good. I mean, he's just not.
Mike Winchell.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, he actually I think he only wears 2 at Michigan now. He doesn't wear 20 anymore like he did at Ole Miss.
And for the people that don't get that inside joke, in Friday Night Lights, Mike Winchell wore number 20 and Shea Patterson wore
quarterback
20.
number 20.
He wore 20 at Ole Miss. But moving on to that, who do you think is going to be the OC and DC next year at Bama?
That's a tough question. And it's a tough question because I don't know who's going to be, but I can come up with a list of who I'd like to see in the running for it, and that's what I'm going to do. As far as defensive coordinator, I'll start off with that. They did make a hire today, and it's not clear what he is going to be.
The guy from Pruitt's staff?
The guy from Tennessee, Charles Kelly.
Yeah.
Now, if Charles Kelly does become the defensive coordinator, this is not a bad hire. The reason being, he was the defensive coordinator for 4 seasons at Florida State after Pruitt left. From 2014 to 2017, he was the defensive coordinator at Florida State.
Went to the playoffs that year in 2014.
Yeah, in 2014 they went to the playoffs. Now, 2014 was actually his worst defense there. I think they finished 52nd in the nation in total defense. But his defense from 15 to 17 was 24th, or I think 15 was – they were 15th in the nation. I think they were 29th in 16, and 2017 when they were terrible, and Bama thrashed them in that first game, and then they ended up going 6-6 or whatever, and going to a bowl game barely. 2017 they finished like 24th in defense, despite the fact that they were a terrible team.
And Louisville destroyed them.
Exactly.
That Louisville game probably, or was it that year that they?
It wasn't. No, it
was it 2016
or no? It might have. I know they got destroyed by Louisville one year with Lamar Jackson.
I think that was 2016. The year.
But
yeah,
I think they did lose.
They
lost in 2017 as well, I believe.
Yeah, they did. I just remember
because they were just not a good team that year.
I think it was 2016 because that was last year.
I think so. But Charles Kelly would not be a bad hire at all. Now, who do I want to see? Charles Kelly, I wouldn't mind, but who do I want to see? We can pay for anybody we want to.
Yeah.
And you probably know who my pick is.
Yep.
My pick is Dave Aranda from LSU.
If they can lure him away, that'd be all right.
Because Dave Aranda already runs a 3-4 defense. That's his bread and butter. He is probably the best defensive mind in football. I don't care what anybody's saying about Don Brown at Michigan. When you got better players than everybody in your entire conference all year, and yeah, it sounds like a joke because it's like, well, Alabama's got better players, but
LSU's always got
the
talent.
Recruiting in the SEC, people do not understand. Just because Alabama's got better players does not mean that the talent disparity is Alabama way up top and then the rest of the SEC is just lagging behind. SEC teams, there's normally 10 of them that finish in the top 25 or 30 in recruiting rankings. Mm-hmm. And usually it's like Vanderbilt and, a few others that just end up kind of lagging behind.
South Carolina.
Yeah.
So I think they had a good recruiting class this year.
They've always got – there's always at least 5 teams in the top 25 at least, and that's really the very low end. They usually have 8 to 10 teams in the top 25 in recruiting. The Big Ten doesn't have anywhere near that. So I don't want to hear anything about Big Ten being better or anything like that. And I don't really care. Like, I've gotten to the point where I'm not worried about, this conference affiliation. Like, I'm not this big SEC fan like I thought I used to be.
No.
Because honestly, I don't like most of the SEC teams anyway.
No, and just so everybody knows, we are Bama fans. However, we were Bama fans when Mike Shula was coaching, and we were getting destroyed by Tennessee.
We were
Auburn.
Bama fans when, like, when we were able to watch when Mike DeBose was there, and when Dennis Franchione came in and got us put on probation, and Mike Shula came in and they were just terrible. I mean,
so the notion that we're fair weather fans or whatever is just not true.
Because we suffered a lot.
I never thought we would see a national championship.
I never thought it.
And also, for the record, last year Nathan and I thought that Bama should not have been in the playoffs because we sucked it against Auburn. Don't know what was going. And like the last several games, we were just kind of
there, like against Mississippi State. Too.
Yeah, and Tua threw that touchdown pass to Devontae, and
that was Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's not Tua. I'm sorry, Jalen. But we thought we were going to get destroyed by Clemson.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, granted, I'll take a championship any day, but just so it's known, So.
Yeah, definitely. So Dave Aranda, would be my choice. And I've already said I would be fine with Charles Kelly being named defensive coordinator because he's good at his job. Dave Aranda would definitely be my choice, though. I haven't really thought about anybody else besides those two. And the only reason I even thought about Charles Kelly is because the rumors have been linking them two together. Charles Kelly coming to Alabama ever since T. Martin got hired back at Tennessee because they apparently got 11 on-field coaches and they have to get rid of one.
Yeah, they reported some violations the other day because Phil Fulmer was helping coach for 30 seconds.
Of course he was. So Dave Aranda is the guy that they should go get. If Manny Diaz hadn't taken the Miami head coaching job, I would have, because he had taken the Temple job and then took the Miami job. If he hadn't have taken any head coaching jobs, he would have been a guy that I would have looked at.
I wish we could lure Brent Venables away.
Now, Brent Venables, I thought about that, but the thing is Brent Venables, Dave Aranda used to make a lot. Now Brent Venables makes a lot. He makes more than most head coaches do.
He's not going anywhere.
So he ain't going anywhere.
And too, he likes. I mean, it's a family up there. It's not. He's not going anywhere.
And I would love to see Venables at Alabama, but it's not going to happen. And I think that at the same time, I don't know if Brent Venables and Nick Saban could coexist very well because
Saban's hard to coach for.
Saban is hard to coach for one, but for two, just defensive scheme. I don't think Saban likes to blitz as much as because Venables is blitzing every play. And
two, Bama typically gets pressure with the front four or the front three.
And now if you turn around and look at the other end, Aranda, until this past year, he hardly ever blitzed. He always ran base defense, and they were just whipping everybody. And, I mean, it's not like they just had better players than anybody because when he was at Wisconsin, he was doing the same thing, and they had nobodies at Wisconsin. Just a bunch of, corn-fed Wisconsin, cheese-fed Wisconsin boys that were just, just whooping everybody. I mean, Aranda, he knows what to do with no talent. So, what does he do with a bunch of five-stars like this guy, Antonio Alfano that's coming in and all these other guys for Alabama? I mean, Aranda would be a home run hire. I don't see Alabama going that route because, the only interesting coordinator hire that they've really made is Lane Kiffin. So I don't see them going that route. I wish they would, though, because Aranda would be a pipe dream for us. But if Charles Kelly was named defensive coordinator, I wouldn't bat an eyelash about it because that'd be a solid hire because Charles Kelly knows what he's doing. I mean, he was on some train wreck football teams and still putting together some great defense. So I have a problem with that.
So now, switch to the other side of the ball.
Now so we switch to the offensive side of the ball, and I'll tell you one thing. This rumor about Steve Sarkisian gonna come back and be named, and they hired Kyle Flood, who was the Atlanta Falcons O-line coach, used to be the head coach at Rutgers. That's one thing, and everybody's saying, "Oh, well, this points to Steve Sarkisian being the offensive coordinator." If he is, there is going to be a riot in the state of Alabama.
Well, Tennessee was going to hire somebody last year, and Tennessee rioted, and they didn't hire him.
Yeah, it's Greg Schiano. And they rioted, and 2 days later, they were like, "Never mind, we're not hiring Greg Schiano. We're going to hire Pruitt."
I wish he hadn't left. Which good on him for moving on and getting a head coaching job.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to pull up these numbers. I've been telling Clint all day, I was like, I got some Sark numbers for you that I'm going to pull up, and I'm going to let you know on. And I was like, these are going to get you pretty well.
Because
So
somebody at work said the other day, talking about Sark, and they're like, well, they had like the number 6 offense in the league, and I was like, maybe that's true. I didn't look it up, but
their scoring went down by 12 points on average.
also you like to get down to the red zone and not throw the ball to Julio that much. I don't understand.
I mean,
but
here's the thing. Here's some Sark numbers that I'm going to give you. So I compiled a list of Sarkisian as a head coach or an offensive coordinator ever since 2007, which was his first year as an offensive coordinator at USC. People tried to say that him and Lane Kiffin were like co-offensive coordinators. He was involved in offensive game planning because he was the quarterback's coach, but they were not technically. Technically, Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator.
They said Lane would always talk over Sark too.
Exactly. So Sarkisian as a head coach or offensive coordinator over these past few years, ever since 2007 to I went up to 2013, which was his first year at USC, not the year that he got fired. I think it was 2013. No, it might not have been. It might have been 2014. I think it was 2014. So here's the numbers for Sarkisian. And keep in mind, these first 2 years, 07 and 08 USC, just coming off of,
the Pete
being
Carroll
the
run.
greatest dynasty of all time. Pete Carroll's still the head coach during this time. 29th in offense for 07. 08, now we make fun of him now, but Mark Sanchez was a heck of a college football quarterback.
Most of those USC guys were good quarterbacks at USC.
And all of the talent that they had, 11th in offense in 08. That was about his peak. Okay. So then he gets hired as a head coach at Washington. And now keep in mind, I think it's these first 3 years that I'm about to rattle off to you. The offensive coordinator was a guy named Doug Nussmeier, who I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Just after this.
Puke.
First year at Washington, 62nd in offense. Second year at Washington, 67th in offense. Third year, this is the year right before Nussmeier gets hired at Alabama because he was, an offensive genius. 38th in offense. Okay. I think it was one more year that he lasted. At Washington. Without Doug Nussmeier this year, 99th in offense.
How do you do that? How do you get an offensive coordinator job at Alabama?
Exactly. And then I think, if I remember correctly, this last year is his first year at USC, but I don't remember. It was either his last year at Washington or his first year at USC. I think his last year at Washington was that 99 number. So I'm going to say first year at USC. First year at USC, 74th in offense. So out of all the years that he's been a head coach or an offensive coordinator, these are all the years right here that don't include the Atlanta Falcons run that we already know was miserable. He has had one elite offense, if you can even call it that, and that was 11th in 2008 with Mark Sanchez, who ended up being a first-round pick, and probably a bunch of other super talented guys in a conference that couldn't even touch USC at that point.
I'm going to pull it up. The Falcons run.
One offense that was even ranked in the top 25 through his entire head coaching and offensive coordinating career. So I have debunked the myth that he is a good offensive coordinator. He is officially highly overrated as an offensive coordinator. And I think, honestly, this may be controversial to some people, but a lot of people in Alabama may agree with this. I think he just rode the coattails of Lane Kiffin at USC.
I believe that. I definitely believe that.
That's what I think right there, because I've never seen it out of Sark being a great offensive coordinator. I think he's just a name that a lot of people just kind of attribute to success because he used to be at USC when they were successful, and they had some good quarterbacks, and he was the quarterback's coach. And he was, I think, the quarterback's coach for Rich Gannon in like 2002 and 2003 in Oakland. But, he's – as an offensive play caller, what has he done? He's not done anything, especially at the college level. Brian Dable was a better hire. Obviously Sark left, and then we got Brian Dable, but Brian Dable was a better offensive coordinator, just by design. His 1 year at Alabama, even with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, was better than any of Sark's years ever. I mean,
in 2016, Atlanta under Kyle Shanahan had the number 1 scoring offense, number 2 in total yards, and they were number 2 overall in point. Overall, excuse me.
They were really good.
Yeah, well,
That's what got him the job at
the stat line's confusing.
49ers.
All right, so they go. They were number 3 in passing yards, 2 in touchdowns, and 4 in interceptions. All right, so let's just look at what old Sark, the alcoholic, has to say.
The Sarkaholic.
Sarkaholic. And that's not, I wish the guy success anywhere he goes, but I don't wish he would come to Bama.
Yeah, definitely not. That's why we're having to sit here and talk about it, is because, when you hear a report that Sark is coming back to Alabama after as miserable as a game as he called, and as miserable as he's been the past 2 years, everybody's been calling for his, firing in Atlanta. Like, Atlanta hates him now. Why would Alabama want that? Because he's familiar with the players. I think
him having a lot of good players at Atlanta has bailed him out.
Exactly.
But they were number 10, and this is all pro football. They were number 10 in total offense. No, 15th. My bad. 17th in points. 6th in yards. 27th in rushing yards. And number 4 in rushing yards and touchdown. Number 3 in touchdowns.
And now the reason why
in 2017, they were number 20 in total touchdowns and number 8 in passing yards and 11th in interceptions. But I really think just having that, just a bunch of freaks on the outside at receiver is really just and having a good quarterback.
Well, exactly. You said he was 15th in total offense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So that doesn't sound like it's that bad.
But there's only.
But
32.
It's terrible when you have the same exact players, and a year ago they were the top two, one of the top 2 offenses in the NFL, and you're play calling with the same exact players with very little. Because in 2017, I don't think hardly any of them were getting injured left and right.
No. Their defense did die.
Their defense died this year.
Yeah, this year. Let's just look at Julio's numbers because it took a while for Julio to get a touchdown this year.
They're not even getting the ball to him,
And I get it. You got a player that is that good.
Yeah, and but it ain't like he ain't been keyed in on his entire career. So
he's been
nobody can use that as an excuse.
All right, so
it's the Sark effect, and I worry that we get somebody in there that just squanders Tua.
Yeah, like Nussmeier did the 2013 offense.
He just submarined it. That's what I fear, and I fear that Sark. I don't care about Sark. Because apparently Sark had a good relationship with Tua, was recruiting him to USC or whatever, but. What does that matter?
Julio had 3 touchdowns in 2017. 3.
3 touchdowns.
He had 1,444 yards receiving.
One of the most prolific receivers in the league.
He'll be a Hall of Famer.
You get him 3 touchdowns.
And then this year,
Antonio Brown was complaining this year, and he had like 11 or 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, and Julio this year had almost 1,700 yards, 1,677 yards. And 8 touchdowns. Only 8 touchdowns?
He's a freak of nature. And
he is one of the best, if not the best, receivers in the league.
Exactly. He's probably right behind Antonio Brown, as I would put him number 2.
He was only targeted 170 times.
And
had 113 receptions.
I mean, I would put him right behind
In
Antonio
2017, he only was targeted 148 times and only had 88 receptions.
Brown. Exactly. I mean, he has to be the focal point of your offense, especially if you're going to be a passing offense like apparently they were under Sark, because they were one of the worst rushing offenses in the nation.
It was 2015. 2015 was a Super Bowl run, right? When they went to the Super Bowl, like 2015, 2016 season.
I don't remember. No, I don't think so. No, 2016 was their Super Bowl run. 2015 was the Panthers and the Broncos that ended up going to the Super Bowl.
Because he had
2015 was Peyton Manning's last year.
Because he ended up having almost 2,000 yards receiving.
Yeah. Yeah, 2015 was
the Super Bowl season
was Dan Quinn's first year, where everybody said, "Oh, the Falcons, their schedule's so easy, they might go undefeated," and they finished like 8-8.
They are one of the most disappointing teams in the past 2 years, but it is
definitely. But a lot of it is Sark's fault, and that's why I don't want him there. So, a lot of names that have been thrown around as a replacement. Trying to remember a lot of them off the top of my head. Larry Fedora, the fired head coach at North Carolina, was mentioned as a possible replacement, and they mentioned another guy, Rob Sale, that is the offensive coordinator at UL Lafayette, because he's the offensive coordinator under Billy Napier, who's in his first year head coaching there. Billy Napier is the guy that, Alabama passed on as offensive coordinator to give to Brian Daboll, and he got mad, and so he left for Arizona State. And those are the two names that I remember. I don't remember off the top of my head anymore. Offensive coordinator, it's a little bit easier to kind of
wish it was Dan Enos.
I really wish it was Dan Enos. That was an excellent thing, but they should have sealed the deal. If what we're hearing is true and they didn't really seal the deal with Dan Enos and get him a contract signed, then hey,
that's Bama's fault.
That's on Bama. They should have got the man a contract and got him signed and got him in there ready to work. I don't know what the drama was with all that went down. I've heard that Dan Enos packed his stuff up and left without telling anybody. I've heard that from Dan Enos himself that he didn't. I don't really care if he did or not. They should have had that guy a contract signed.
As soon as Mike Locksley
took the head coaching job at Maryland, it should have been a contract in waiting, and the day after the national title game, he signs on the dotted line, paid this much amount of money, and it's time to work for next year. I mean, that's what they should have done, because Dan Enos was going to be a home run hire.
It could have been cool if we could have got Cliff Kingsbury at his offense.
Yeah, and I would have loved Cliff Kingsbury, but, Cliff Kingsbury is now head coach at the NFL, which we'll probably talk about here in a little bit too.
That's actually our next. Well, that's not our next topic. But.
And honestly, if Freddie Kitchens wouldn't have got the Browns head coaching position, I would have loved to see Saban make a big run for him, because he is a great. He proved in just eight or so games this year how good of an offensive mind he is. And everybody's like, well, Freddie Kitchens, he went from running backs coach at the beginning of the year to now all of a sudden he's a head coach. Freddie Kitchens has been coaching for a long time. He's been coaching in the NFL for a while, and he's highly respected in the profession by a lot of people. Larry Fitzgerald thinks high of him. And if Larry Fitzgerald thinks high of you, because he's one of the highest character guys ever.
Chris Carter was impressed how much he knew the X's and O's.
Exactly. I mean, Freddie Kitchens, and he's down home from Etowah. He went to Etowah High School from, Atala, Alabama, homegrown Alabama boy. I mean, he is a guy that connects with everybody. But this ain't about him right now. But nonetheless, he was a great head coaching hire. But going back to Alabama offensive coordinators, I just haven't put a whole lot of research into it yet.
I haven't heard a lot of.
I don't know who I want in there. I know I don't want Sarkisian
or Doug Nussmeier,
and definitely don't want Doug Nussmeier.
I don't know why they don't make a run at Jim McElwain.
That's what I thought too. I thought that Jim McElwain would have been a, appropriate hire to bring back. I think it would have made a lot of people excited, because I think he really just knows what to do offensively with Alabama. I'm not going to go like Jarrett's route, your brother, and say that he's the best offensive coordinator we've ever had, because Lane Kiffin deserves that honor before anybody else does, because Lane Kiffin modernized Alabama's offense. but he was awesome at Alabama and really just knew what to do with what he had because he never really had just an incredible quarterback during his time
he had
period.
a decent quarterback, and he had it was one receiver and then some other guys,
and then 2 or 3 running backs that could have been in the Heisman running. Every season, Ingram, Trent Richardson, Eddie Lacy,
Ed Lacy.
Ed Lacy, if he would have had more carries, and because in 2012, now this was obviously the first year of Nussmeier, Lacy and Yeldon ran for both 1,000 yards apiece. So
and that was was 2014 when Amari went to the Heisman voting.
Yeah, Amari was a Heisman finalist. He caught for 1,700 something yards. So yeah, at the end of the day, I don't know who I want as Alabama's offensive coordinator, mostly because I just haven't done the research on who's available. Haven't done enough research on it. I just know I don't want Sark.
They might not even bring Sark. There's not been any once the headlines broke that he was seen on campus, and then it was just I think the media ran with it.
Yeah, exactly.
There really hasn't been any truth to back up those sayings that he's going to be at OC. So.
Yeah, definitely. One name that kind of hasn't really been heard since he got fired as a head coach at Oregon. And no, I'm not talking about Chip Kelly because he's at UCLA, but Mark Helfrich I don't think would be a bad hire. But I feel like he might be he's offensive coordinator somewhere, I believe, in the NFL. If he was available, I don't think he would be a bad hire at all because he was a pretty good guy, and he's kind of cut from Chip Kelly's cloth, so he knows offense. He just wasn't a good head coach. They went to the playoffs that one year mostly because of Mariota, because he was so great. He had 57 total touchdowns in 2014. And then 2015 came around and they just completely lost it and fell off the map. So yeah, I don't know who I want for Alabama's offensive coordinator. I know I don't want Sark at all. But I'll have to do more research on it, and if they don't have a offensive coordinator hired by the time that we do our next show, then I'll have a compiled list of who I want to see.
So, how do you think they'll do next year, Bama? Because we have there's a lot of defensive talent that's going to have to be replaced, but also in my opinion, this is one of the least talented Bama defenses we've had. Now, in the beginning of the year, I thought, well, this is the biggest secondary Saban's probably had since the 2011 run, because they were long and they were rangy. But it doesn't matter. Those big receivers from Clemson just were manhandling.
Like Justin Ross, man, that Alabama boy, he was a monster. That guy's going to be a first-round NFL wide receiver right there. He is
like
amazing.
Mike Williams almost.
He is amazing. How do I think Alabama will do next year? Here's the thing. I don't think they're going anywhere.
No, not that.
No, I'm not saying that you. No, I'm not saying that you're saying that at all. I don't think they're going anywhere, and I'll give you the reasons why. The pressure has now shifted to Clemson. This wasn't, 2016 Clemson wins the national title, and then all of a sudden we come into 2017 and nobody's talking about Alabama because everybody's still talking about Bama. Now it's true because Clemson didn't win with Deshaun Watson on the last second play. They beat Alabama's, head in. So Alabama may not even be number 2 coming into next year. They may be number 3 or number 4.
Which I'm okay with.
I love that.
I would rather them be
Alabama
number 10.
plays harder when they are behind.
Put them at number 10.
Because it seems like Alabama just cannot do the 15-0 thing.
Well, it's like if you look back at the 2013 team, we had gone back to back, and AJ McCarron was at that realm, back to back.
Yeah.
And then when they played, I watched the first quarter and a half of that Iron Bowl, and they just played tight. They did. It's like they were playing
pressure,
playing to lose.
Yep.
And I think that I don't know why that Saban's team somehow. I don't know if it's because it's always Bama's so great, Bama's so great, Bama's so great, and they hear it, and then Saban is trying to get rid of the rat poison, but somehow it just doesn't get out of the players' ears, and I think that, I mean, you've been to the national championship game 4 years in a row, you were been in the playoffs every year, and not to mention your players are listening to them being told they're playing for the GOAT, which they are. I just think that absolutely it's resemblant of what happened with the 2013 team, and then what happened in the Natty is the 2014 season.
Absolutely. We heard all year long
Greatest
they might not
team.
ever lose a game because Tua's the quarterback and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it was Saban's greatest offense and probably the best
Yep.
offense ever at Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
But it was, this is the greatest team ever. This is the greatest team ever. This is the greatest team ever.
Exactly. And the thing is, if you could just take the media out of everything, I think you never see Alabama lose a game if it wasn't for the media. But the media hypes them up so bad. They hype up anybody. Like they hyped up Jeremy Johnson to win the Heisman.
You remember David said he smells?
Yeah. But, so how do I think they're going to do? I think I think they'll be either back or very close to back to the dance next year. Because it is, as Thana thought said, the Alabama Invitational.
Alabama Invitational.
So,
I agree.
all right, so listen, and this is why. All right, you got Tua coming back,
the best
quarterback.
receiving core in the country.
Best receiving core in the country. Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Blitnikoff winner. Henry Ruggs III, who has really come on. Irv Smith is –
He's gone.
Yeah, Irv Smith went to the draft.
Is Hell Hentges gone too?
Yeah, Hell Hentges was a senior. And you lose Jonah Williams and Ross Pierce-Baker on the O-line. But you got Deontay Brown will be back at left guard. Alex Leatherwood will be back. He was a starter. Jedrick Wills will be back. He was a starter. So all you have to do is replace left tackle and center. Now,
and
Alex
Najee,
Leatherwood or Jedrick Wills may move to left tackle, and because Matt Womack is still on the team that played right tackle there for a little while in 2016, he's serviceable. Like, he can do the job as long as he stays healthy. So they may plug Wills in at left tackle and plug Womack in at right tackle, and then you just got to find a center. And I think they've got some guys that can play center on the roster already. Like I think there was a guy that came in. He was like a 4 or 5 star named Emil Ikiyor. He could probably play center, but I'm sure they'll find somebody. They usually like somebody that's pretty experienced to play that center position. So, I'm sure that they'll solve that. You've got Najee Harris returning.
He's going to be the premier back.
And he's going to be the premier guy. You got Brian Robinson, who we've always talked about.
Yep.
We think Brian Robinson could play most places.
That says he's going to win
you
the
got Trey
Heisman.
Sanders that, and some people are like, well, he's cocky. They're going to have to beat that out of him. Well, I think that I don't think it's not because he's a team player. I think it's because he just sets that goal for himself, because when you hear him speak, he's not speaking in a thuggish manner like, I'm going to win the Heisman and I don't really care what my team thinks about it. He's speaking like, that's the goals that I have set for myself. Dude, set high goals for yourself. He's probably not going to win the Heisman as a freshman at Alabama because you're behind Najee Harris for one, and then behind Brian Robinson as well. But he'll be the third back.
Oh, yeah.
And this guy's talented.
Maybe Najee will get more carries. And Najee he has flashes of Derek. You give him the ball more.
You give him the ball more, and he just eats it up.
Yeah, and he gets better as the game goes on. Versus, with Bo Scarborough, I don't know what happened to Bo.
Yeah, and then on defense, everybody thinks that it's just going to be a catastrophe, but it's not. They lose Deontay Thompson, who really towards the back half of the year did not play well at all. He should have had more. He should have had 2 picks.
Still an All-American.
Yeah.
I don't know how.
I think the All-American voting is more just an eye test. I don't think it's really a production test. I think that there's a lot of players that just kind of go unnoticed.
They said Deontay Thompson kept the secondary in the locker room after the Arkansas game.
He might have, but obviously, he didn't live up to himself there towards the end of the year, because his draft stock went from first-round talent to he may get drafted in the 4th or 5th round.
A lot of those guys leaving, I don't think should leave. I think Mac Wilson should leave because he sucked it up.
Yeah, people – I know a lot of people like Mac Wilson, but at the end of the day, he's a fast guy that's probably decent in coverage.
He's not Reuben.
He cannot make the calls. Like
Is thuggish as
this
Ruben
defense,
has been.
this defense
yeah.
was a concerted effort of horridness this year because it was Mac Wilson can't make the right calls, and then you got Tosh Lapoy who obviously just got too pressured and couldn't do it, and then Pete Golding, if he really did take over in October, he didn't do much better. Quinnen Williams is the reason why that defense didn't fall apart this year because he was a monster.
Isaiah Buggs couldn't because it was always out of breath. I don't know.
And Raekwon Davis is returning.
Yeah.
And Raekwon, I think he just kind of got when he really exploded on the scene in 2017, they were like, we're going to take him out. This year we've got to make sure we get that guy. Well, lo and behold, Quinnen Williams comes in here and he's a monster. But they've got that guy from Madison, LeBron Ray.
Yep.
That guy, he's a stud. And then they've got.
Didn't he get arrested the other day?
He did get arrested, I think, for DUI or something like
Yeah.
that. Obviously, he'll be, ready to play by the time the season comes around. He shouldn't have done that. I think it's public intoxication or something. How do you get drunk in public and get arrested for it? I never know because I'm not a drunk and I don't understand. But, he'll still be back and he's going to be a beast next year. He's already shown flashes of how great he can be. There's a guy that we recruited, a 5-star guy named Ayabi Anoma.
Yep.
That guy, all he's got to do is get the mental aspect down. He is a physical freak, and he was almost making plays even though he didn't know what to do on most plays. Like, he was almost making plays in backup duty, just on being good. I mean, and then you got this 5-star coming in, Antonio Alfano, who I'm high on because this guy's a smart dude. That's big. I mean, he's 6'5", 265, 270, and he's smart. I mean, he's a smart guy. He can catch. He'll play as a freshman. I don't think he'll redshirt. I think he will play as a freshman. But then you got Anthony Jennings that's returning. If he doesn't jump off sides, he's one of the best offensive or one of the best outside linebackers in the nation. And you got Terrell Lewis. If he can just stay healthy, he will be a monster. Mark my words. But the thing is him just staying healthy because when he's healthy, he makes plays
like he did in the Natty and the playoffs.
Yeah, and now Dylan Moses he's good. And then you got to replace that other middle linebacking because Dylan Moses will probably be the guy that makes the adjustments and calls everything out. You got Joshua McMillan that's been there for a while. I think he'll either be like a redshirt junior or something like that. He's up in age there. And then you got that young guy, Eli Cahoe or El Cahoe or whatever his name is. I don't really know how to pronounce his first name, but he's a stud too. He's a guy that was recruited late in the cycle last year, and he's a guy that can play. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And then the defensive backfield, which was supposed to be the weakness, has turned into the strength because Xavier McKinney's back. Shaheen Carter, we were talking about, he's back.
Is he a sophomore?
I think he's going to be a senior this year.
Okay.
Patrick Surtain, the second, he will be a first-round draft pick.
I know. He got picked on against Oklahoma, but
he's going up against C.D. Lamb, a guy that's going to be a first-round NFL talent that flexes his muscles every time his non-existent muscles, his little toothpick twig arms every time he catches a ball. And that was the only reason I was getting so mad about it. I was like, if he catches another ball and flexes them little toothpick arms, I'm about to lose it. And everybody's like, well, he stunk it up in this game. He had no help up top on most of those plays. No. And on most of those plays,
they're back shoulder throws.
I don't make excuses, but on some of those, C.D. Lamb was pushing off a little bit. You probably could have called it. You probably couldn't have called it. But I'm not going to make any excuses. I mean, I will never make excuses for refs losing the game for Bama because they got a vendetta against them. I don't even know what a vendetta is. They don't have a vendetta against Alabama.
No.
If anything, sometimes the calls go Alabama's way more.
Like in the Mississippi State game, that one call that you like barely touched him, and they called a block in the back.
I mean,
or he didn't even touch him.
Calls just go bad either way sometimes. I think he was pushing off a little bit on Surtain, but at the same time, Surtain didn't have any help up top on most of those plays, back shoulders, and you're just getting ate up.
Yep.
And plus, which we could talk about for a little bit, you just can't play friggin' defense anymore. And in football. Like
No, in the NFL,
pass
it's not,
interference
yeah.
has just ruined the sport where
And spot
it's all
fouls in
about
the NFL.
scoring. It's all about the game being 56-49 at the end of the game because everybody's throwing for 550 yards, and that honestly to me that's ruining the game.
And we'll talk about that in a little later.
But you're returning Patrick Surtain. Savion Smith's leaving, which Savion Smith was good at times, but he also was like Ronnie Harrison, had a hot head, and almost got us into personal foul trouble a lot of different times that I noticed that he just didn't get flagged for. So Savion Smith, I mean, it's not going to hurt us that he's gone because Trayvon Diggs is also back from that injury. Trayvon Diggs is a legitimate first round.
I forgot about him. I thought he got drafted or something. I just legit stopped.
He's a legitimate first round cornerback talent.
And he's tall. He's
big, 6'2". He's like his brother, Stephon, that plays in wide receiver for the Vikings.
Which he played receiver too, didn't he? And they moved him.
He played receiver, and then they moved him to cornerback because they thought he would be better. And he's turned out like a Cyrus Jones. He's turned out to be a lot better at that position. I mean, he's one of the best in the nation. And they've got, like Jared Maiden and Daniel Wright, some other guys at the opposite safety position that can probably play. So in the defensive backfield, they are loaded.
I wish we could get a new special teams coach.
Well, the special teams coach he was a new coach this year. Now he was the guy at Texas A&M before, so just maybe pay attention to him this year. It might be a lot different.
I don't think Bama has like a dedicated kicking coach. I don't think most schools do in the college. I could be wrong.
I don't think so.
But if there was a way that we could hire Jamie Cole for special teams,
oh yeah,
I would just be the happiest person ever. Jamie Cole went to one of his camps, got invited to another elite camp up in Wisconsin when I was a sophomore. For punting, but he's the kicking, punting, and long snapping, or the special teams. Like coming out of high school, he puts guys in, helps them get scholarships and everything, and also
he's the guru,
and he's the one who decides who goes and plays in the Under Armour All-American game for the kicker, punter, and snappers for both teams. He's the one that decides that.
Yeah, tiny bit of background on Jamie Cole. He used to play at Iowa State, and I think he ended up being like the leading scorer all time at Iowa State as a kicker.
The dude knows his stuff. Like he. Getting off top just a little bit, like my freshman year of high school, there was somebody else running Auburn's kicking camp. And then when I went back the next year, Coach Cole was running it, and it was just completely different. Had guys that played in the league, guys that played in college. Like our punting coach was the all-time leading punter in yards at University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and like. It was like some ridiculous, like 8,000 or 9,000 yards in punting, like just absurd.
Gracious.
Yeah, and he was a lefty too, which was cool. Just they are really good dudes, and like he helps guys get into the league. So the dude probably makes more money and he gets probably more out of doing what he does than he would be as a college
definitely
coach.
helping more people.
But if that was a hire, I would just be out of this world with happiness.
Yeah, people are trying to devalue kickers and punters, but they're very important.
Obviously, I mean,
and Alabama, definitely knows the importance of a kicker.
I mean,
because we never have one.
2011 game against LSU.
I mean,
the regular season game, not the national championship.
Yeah, and goodness gracious,
and last year in the national championship, it almost cost us the national championship game.
Yeah,
and it's not a knock at the kickers. Like, it is a mental game, and you can look at Cody Parkey or any of the other guys and Daniel Carlson. It is a mental game. Like,
they tore it up at Auburn, and then the NFL they struggle.
If you think that you're going to miss that kick, you've already missed that kick mentally. And for instance, whenever I was at the kicking camp at Auburn, we had the number one kicker in the country there, Austin Harden. The dude kicked like a game-winning 59-yarder his junior year. He played in Georgia. He was getting recruited everywhere. Like, we were all having to, like, walk, like, 5 miles back to camp. He was getting rode around on golf carts by
I remember
the coaching
you telling me about that.
And he ended up going and playing at Florida.
And it was terrible.
There's videos, like, of him his senior year, like, getting ready for the Under Armour All-American game, kicking, like, 60 and 65-yard field goals off the turf, like, just killing it. Well, come game time, he couldn't hit an extra point off the turf. What the heck's wrong with this guy? Well, he gets to Florida, and he just sucks.
Yep,
Like, the dude
absolutely.
was kicking field goals on kickoffs. That's how good he was. And then when he gets to Florida, he just like dies. And
He just forgets everything.
and now Florida's kicker is
Evan McPherson.
Evan McPherson, and I roomed with his brother at Auburn, Logan. And they both played at Fort Payne, and Logan played at La Tech, and now his little brother's down there. So Coach Cole knows what he's doing. It was a little tangent we got off on, but nonetheless, special teams is important.
Yeah, be nice.
All right, so moving on to the NFL now. Cliff Kingsbury at Arizona.
Cliff Kingsbury at Arizona sounds like a weird hire because of his track record at Texas Tech as a head coach. I did read this. It was on the USA Today or New York Times or something. It was an opinion article that made a little bit of sense. Being a head coach at an NFL team and running a college program are two different things.
Yeah, they talked about. I think Chris Carter talked about it too.
Yeah, NFL team is more about just doing the X's and O's. You're not worried about where your players are at and what they're doing.
You're coaching grown men.
You're not having to be in the control
figure.
of the
Yeah.
entire program. Because you still obviously Nick Saban still technically has a boss, even though he probably pretty much runs Alabama at this point. But the NFL, you legitimately, as a head coach, your owner, and your general manager, if you're not Bill Belichick, they're guys that have to help you make decisions. The owner can go and say, I want this player because I think he's going to bring in more money. And, if he doesn't waver on that, you are stuck with it regardless. So the thing is you can game plan and just kind of play X's and O's in the NFL, whereas college is more about recruiting and worrying where everybody is and how many coaches can you get on your staff to help you out. The NFL is more of an X's and O's, just settle down and play
also
the X's and O's. He's a good offensive coach, definitely.
Offensive
the only
genius.
thing I worry about is him as a head coach. He's going to have to get somebody in there that can really coach defense because he never had anywhere near a decent defense at Texas Tech.
Well, also I don't know why defense does not exist except for when they play Georgia in the Sugar
Big
Bowl
12.
in the Big 12. But it was Chris Carter. He said, talking about how it's a difference in college and NFL, and even as a head coach, it's. But there was somebody who was asking a head coach in a press conference in the NFL, like, what about the defense? Like, what are they running? Yada, yada, yada. And he's like, I don't know. Why don't you go ask the defensive coordinator?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it'll be interesting. He had Johnny Manziel and got him to a Heisman. He had Patty Mahomes
and Baker Mayfield. At one point.
So, and they had really good offenses.
And then another guy named Davis Webb that ended up getting picked by the Giants was a Texas Tech product as well.
So I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully he does good, because I don't think he's a bad dude.
Yeah, I was in his corner at Texas Tech. He just never was able to pull it all together. Right behind Alabama. Honestly, literally right behind Alabama, I was obviously nobody can ever even get close to my fandom for Alabama, but I was like, man, Texas Tech's up there. I'm pulling.
But you
for
even
Kingsbury.
talked about him when he was at A&M. You always liked him at A&M.
Yeah, I was like, Kingsbury's going to get a head coaching job, here soon, and he's an excellent offensive coach, but they could not put it all together at Texas Tech. But maybe he's able to put it together at the Cardinals. But I'm going to tell you where it starts with. His success is going to live or die on how much they improve that offensive line. Because the offensive line is Swiss cheese, and nobody can play good quarterback.
No.
Even Josh Rosen can't play good quarterback behind that offensive line right now. David Johnson can't run the ball behind that offensive line right now. So, and then Walter Football is kind of a website that I frequent a lot. Walter Cherepinski runs it. He has a mock draft out, and he's got the first overall pick. Obviously he's going to Arizona, and he's got them picking Nick Bosa. And I just don't think that's a good idea. I think that what they need to do is, you can pick some. I mean, you can pick a game-changing edge rusher, and it may be fine, but maybe you also let somebody that is going to be dumb enough to trade up and get Dwayne Haskins as their quarterback. Maybe you trade down, get some draft capital, and
or even pick Kyler Murray.
Drop back for a little bit, and pick you a good left tackle, good offensive lineman like Jonah Williams or that guy Jawan Taylor out of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Pick somebody that's going to anchor your offensive line for years because they need it. Look at the Colts. They had a terrible offensive line. All of a sudden, they draft Ryan Kelly. They draft Quentin Nelson. They get some other, decent players in there. All of a sudden, they're the best offensive line in the league, or one of, And all of a sudden, Andrew Luck is healthy again, and he's got time to throw, So now you can't really correlate a top offensive line to immediate Super Bowl winning. You're going to win the Super Bowl every year because the top offensive lines in the league really are teams that are not winning Super Bowls, like the Steelers that aren't even in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, then the Cowboys a couple of years ago. The Raiders a couple of years ago.
I mean, they were the teams that everybody was talking about, and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So you can't directly correlate that. But if you got 2 or 3 really good offensive linemen, you're going to move the ball, and the thing is you can't just spend all your money on 5 offensive linemen. You just can't. But if you got 3 quality guys and just 2 kind of plug and play guys, you're all right.
So
when it comes to that.
Do you think that these are like our next 2 topics? Do you think that they'll trade Josh Rosen away and draft Kyler Murray since Cliff Kingsbury was talking about it?
It depends on what Cliff and the general manager come up with as a consensus. If everybody's sitting here and saying that they think Kyler Murray is a first-round draft pick, and Walter Football brought up a good point, because he does not believe Kyler Murray can be an NFL quarterback.
I don't think
he's got him listed as quarterback, wide receiver, halfback, because he thinks that he would be a better wide receiver or halfback because he's too short. Yet I'm not against shorter guys playing quarterback, but when if it comes out in this combine that he's legitimately 5'8" or 5'7", which is what everybody says is a real possibility because he's very short and he's not anywhere near 5'11" that they had him listed
I saw a
at.
picture of him standing next to Doug Flutie. He was taller. It could have been shoes, but like you said, he's just tiny.
I mean, he's small, so
it's not that tiny quarterbacks or small quarterbacks are a bad thing. Look at Baker Mayfield. Look at Russell Wilson.
But the thing is, at the same time, Baker Mayfield's still at least 6 foot tall.
He is 6 foot, and he weighs like 220.
And then Russell Wilson, yeah, he's the guy that everybody points to, but Russell Wilson is extraordinarily smart and an extraordinarily talented football guy. Now, I'm not saying Kyler Murray's not talented, but Russell Wilson was playing against tough defenses at Wisconsin that last year, and he was shredding them.
Which Kyler Murray, him and CeeDee Lamb were Oklahoma's offense. And, or Oklahoma, because their defense was terrible.
They definitely were, but that was with a good offensive line going up against Alabama's worst defense that they've had other than 2007.
Well, I'm not directly talking about the Orange Bowl, but if a team, in my opinion, is dumb enough to pick him, more power to him because financially it makes more sense. If a team is gonna draft him in the first round, and if the number 1 overall pick, and it is Arizona, and they were to trade Josh Rosen, I would be okay with it, just because it'll take him longer to get big money in the majors if he doesn't, because he's going to have to play triple and double A ball.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And some guys
for years.
Yeah, and some guys never make it out of the farm leagues. Like Jared,
definitely.
My little brother was telling me about a guy from Ardmore. He's a pitcher. He's drafted number 1 overall. Positional and pitchers are different players, but he was drafted number 1 overall in the majors. He never made it out of the farm leagues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which there is more talent, more competition as a pitcher.
Definitely.
And Aaron Judge just now got a contract like last year, and he was the face of the Yankees.
Yep, definitely.
So now longevity and playing longer, absolutely, it makes more sense to play baseball. But if he gets drafted in the 3rd round, he says, "Nah, I'm good. I'll go play baseball," because he's probably going to make the same amount of money as the 3rd or 4th round pick. But if a team drafts him at number 1 overall pick, even in the 1st round, he's going to get paid. And
he's going to get paid, and he's going to play.
And they drafted Lamar Jackson. And Lamar is taller, but Lamar is not as good as a thrower as Kyler. And now Kyler's playing against worse defenses, so you can make that argument. But I don't know. I think he's making a good decision.
Yeah, the decision is great from a financial standpoint for him.
If he can stay healthy, which I don't think he can because he weighs 195 pounds.
Yeah, and he's not. There's not much room on his frame to bulk up at all. And if he does, it's like Walter Football was saying. If he does, how much speed does he lose? By trying to bulk up and get heavier. If Cliff Kingsbury wants to live and die with Kyler Murray in the NFL, then so be it.
And
they do need to trade away Josh Rosen.
Yes, because I don't like Josh Rosen.
So they need to trade Josh Rosen to somebody who's a little bit more desperate.
Yeah, and his stat line in college was not that great. He basically had like a 50 to 60% completion rate.
Well, this is the thing. Like I told you about this when they were talking about Josh Allen last year. There is not a single quarterback in the NFL besides Tyrod Taylor, who was starting week 1 for the Browns, and he didn't start too much longer after that. Which his best year still rounded up to 60%, but there is not a single quarterback in the NFL that was starting that did not have at least a 160% year throwing the ball at the college level. And, I was telling you about because Josh Allen threw 56% really for his career.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, well, it's because Wyoming has terrible receivers and they're all dropping it. And I was like, not so fast. Among all the quarterbacks last year in the draft, he had the second best drop rate among wide receivers. Sam Darnold was the only one that had it better. Lamar Jackson's, on the other hand, was like they were dropping balls like 9% of the time.
Yeah.
Almost 10% of the time. That means 1 out of every 10 dropbacks, the receiver is going to drop the ball. So, that I think that, you got to have a guy that's had 60% at least 1 year at college. I understand Josh Allen, has got people excited because he is running around like a goose or whatever.
How can somebody can sustain that very long?
But
I mean, look at Cam.
Has he been a good thrower? No.
Like
Josh Allen has been terrible.
That one play that I sent you, so they were playing who were they playing? Miami? I think it was Miami.
Somebody.
There was Josh Allen threw a slant, and the slant was open for a touchdown, and it was so far behind that it hit.
Yeah, Zay Jones had to redirect himself.
When he caught it behind himself, it redirected his momentum, and that's how he scored. Yeah. It was that bad, and it's on the Bills' Instagram account if you want to look it up. But talking about the passer completing, all right, for instance, in 2015-2016 season, Josh Allen threw for 3,668 yards. Well, he had 292 completions out of 487 attempts. So, what is that, 54, 55%?
It's no better than 56. I know that much.
And only 23 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. So you could chalk that up to being a sophomore or freshman, whatever he was. The next year, he only played in 6 games, so he must have got hurt. Obviously, I didn't do my homework very well, but so the year he came out of the before he came out for the draft, 282 completions, 451 attempts for 3,717 yards, threw 10 picks, 26 touchdowns, and was sacked 26 times.
Yeah, I mean, he's never been a high volume accuracy guy. Now, on the other hand, you got a guy like Baker Mayfield that was getting, and we were even questioning it. I was like, why? Because I wanted Sam Darnold first overall to Cleveland. I thought Sam Darnold was probably the best quarterback.
And they talked about taking. I think there was talk about taking 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and now, it turns out I may be very wrong, and it looks like John Dorsey was very right, at least for this first year, and I hope so.
And they should have gave the starting job to Baker.
They should have, yeah.
Their season
he
probably
officially won the backup job.
Yeah, their season probably would have looked a little.
Watching
different.
Hugh
Jackson,
those little highlights of Hard Knocks. Everybody talks about how sad Hugh Jackson just sounded as a head coach, like giving Duke Johnson the day off because he didn't want Duke Johnson to get hurt. And Todd Haley was like, well, we need to stop living in our fears and, get these guys out here to do work and not worry about if they're going to get hurt or not. As a coach, and, I plan on going into the coaching profession, here very soon. Even I'm not going to just not have people practice because I don't want them to get hurt. How are we supposed to get better, and how are we supposed to game plan for people?
You don't do that unless a player's hurt.
Yeah, and you don't get into game shape. If you don't let them practice, even though they're injury prone, they will never get into game shape and they will get hurt. because it's something like everybody's talked about, like Marquise Hollywood Brown, because you have to call him Hollywood Brown every time because he's got a stupid nickname. Marquise Hollywood Brown, that hurt himself in the Big 12 championship game. Well, he comes back, and everybody says he's about 75% in that Alabama game, and he was able to do nothing.
He
Why?
limped.
Because he was limping, and because he was not in game shape.
No,
you sit at home for
and he
4
didn't trust.
weeks.
Yeah, and he didn't trust his. And you could make the argument he didn't trust his injury.
Yeah, didn't trust the ankle. When you're at that point, when you're 4 weeks out, you got to get back into game shape.
Your training staff. Look at what they did with Tua versus. I mean, I'm sure that they don't have the medical staff that Bama does, but and that's not a knock at Oklahoma's facilities or anything. It's just
it's just the truth.
Yeah.
Alabama is one of the highest spenders in the nation in that regard. But you got to be in game shape. But yeah, overall, I will tell you this much: like, I will not. If I was a general manager, which I will never be, but if I was a general manager, I do not draft a quarterback that did not have at least a 60%. Because back in the day, you could draft guys like that because back in the day it was a lot harder to throw the ball because that you could actually play defense. But in nowadays, if you cannot complete 60% of your passes in today's football, where everything's geared toward passing the ball, then I don't trust it. I don't trust it at all.
And the numbers are not there for Josh Rosen.
And
the way he was smug, like not getting taken the overall, just sitting there with that smug face and then getting pissed off because he didn't get taken the first pick. The guy that got taken the first pick was the Heisman Trophy winner.
Exactly.
And had a historic season. And that the only person.
And everybody was still counting him out.
Yeah.
Because we even were.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy who broke his stat line was the next Heisman Trophy winner. So for you to sit there and be smug, and then like on the Jason Whitlock show, those former NFL players were like, we saw how he acted when he didn't get picked in the first 9 picks, and then you come in the locker room and you act like that. No, screw you. We're not gonna have this attitude. And he's always on social media, being the social justice warrior. Play football, dude. Play football.
Yeah, like he really knows everybody's struggles, because he doesn't have to work at McDonald's in case the football thing doesn't work out, because that's exactly what he said. There's a difference between being kind of an upstanding person and just saying stupid things, and he just says stupid things.
He's like Ryan Tannehill and Jay Cutler.
When he said that thing about, well, my family's not stupid rich, but his dad was like a smidge away from being the attorney general under Obama. So it's not like he's not prestigious. He's like, my family's not stupid rich, but I won't have to work at McDonald's if the football thing doesn't
Why even
pan
say
out.
that?
Like, why do you have to say something like that? For one, people at McDonald's, I mean, there's some people that just have to work there, and
we both worked at McDonald's in high school.
And how are you going to get your food if nobody works at McDonald's? If you stop at McDonald's in the morning for breakfast, how are you going to get your food if nobody works there? Because a robot, they're not at the point where robots just spit that stuff off the assembly line. So for one thing, for him to insult McDonald's workers like that is just kind of ridiculous. It may sound like a social justice warrior type rant, and it's not really, but it's just, when you're spoon-fed like that, people that weren't spoon-fed get really irritated when you say stuff like that.
Yep.
For one thing. For another thing, Josh Rosen's got that entire just smug attitude about him, taking pictures of him with his little pool in his, dorm room or whatever. I'd rather take somebody that's got a chip on their shoulder.
I'd rather take Baker Mayfield all day.
And
Baker is the underdog.
And a lot of people are not talking about it, and a lot of people will hate me for saying this, and I don't really care. Baker Mayfield had every bit as good of a season as Tom Brady did this year. He had almost the exact same numbers.
And he's played less games.
And he played in less games. I think he just had less yards, but touchdowns and interceptions to him and Tom Brady were both similar.
And he broke the rookie record for passing touchdowns.
Exactly.
And played in less games.
And I think the rookie record was held by a guy named Peyton Manning, too, because in 98, Peyton Manning was drafted. His first year, he had 26 touchdowns and 28 interceptions. And then that second year, Peyton Manning just took off because he's the sheriff. And I don't care what anybody says. Tom Brady is the greatest by achievements, but Peyton Manning is always going to be one of my favorite quarterbacks to have ever watched, just because he was the sheriff. He's the guy that made all the calls. I mean, he ran the offense.
And they said that I think what's his name? Jared Goff is the first player to do it in a while, but since Peyton Manning. But top-rated high school recruit, number one, like college stud, number one rated draft pick, and then lighting it up in the NFL in year 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving on from that, the AB controversy.
AB controversy.
We could probably be really short with this one.
We can be pretty short with this one because I'll tell you this much as a Steelers fan, because I am a big Steelers fan, and I'll tell you this much: AB is the best receiver in the league right now by far, and it's not. It's kind of like the Barry Sanders effect. He's a guy that's smaller than everybody else. He's 5'10", 185 pounds or whatever, and he has dominated every year. Just go and look at his stats. Every year he's got around 1,500 yards and around 15 touchdowns just every season. He's one of the best route runners and some of the best hands in the league. But he is a diva personality like many wide receivers are. The only wide receiver that I can't really point to being a diva is also one of the best is Julio Jones.
He's quiet.
I mean, he's so quiet. But here's the thing about Antonio Brown. As great as he is the greatest receiver. I'll be honest with you, of just my adult lifetime, I think Antonio Brown's been the best receiver in the league, during my adult lifetime. I can't say he's the best receiver of my lifetime because Jerry Rice was still playing when I was born and when Clint was born as well. So, I mean, that would be just, unrealistic. My adult lifespan, Antonio Brown has been the best, since I've been about 18 years old. Before then, it'd be Randy Moss.
Randy Moss. You got moused.
But
you think they'll trade him?
As great as Antonio Brown is, I think they're listening to trade offers. And if I'm the general manager, I'm trading him. I'm getting draft capital for him because, listen, it would be different. I would say work it out with him if they didn't have Juju Smith-Schuster on their roster.
Yep, and he's really
Smith-Schuster is going to be a top. I mean, he's a top dog. Now.
And they said that he's been complaining. AB's been complaining. And if you don't know who AB is, we're talking about Antonio. Did we say Antonio Brown?
Yeah, okay. Antonio Brown.
But he was getting mad because Juju was getting the ball. Like, I guess the coverages has shifted. And that's
what I was saying, earlier on, because this. They obviously released Todd Haley from his contract last year, and they promoted Randy Fichtner to offensive coordinator position this year, and he was a good offensive coordinator this year. And had it not been for, Big Ben's just double-sorted incompetence where sometimes he throws for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns and sometimes he throws for 500 yards and 16 interceptions in one game because he just goes, completely
and then
ridiculous.
Places the blame on somebody else.
And then places the blame on everybody else. But Antonio Brown had a bunch of touchdowns this year and a bunch of yards and was still complaining. Like, what are you to complain about? Because Juju had more yards than you did?
Not a team player.
Well, go out there and play, man.
There was somebody on the Jason Whitlock show that played with AB, I think earlier in his...
Probably James Harrison. I know James Harrison comes on there a lot.
It might have been James. I was listening to it on my way home from work, so I didn't get to see who it was, and I wasn't paying that much attention. But he said that...
Or it could have been Ryan Clark, too. Ryan Clark goes on those shows a lot.
It might have been Ryan Clark. Anyways, he said that... when they got AB, and then at some point when he started asking for more money, he told somebody on the coaching staff or in the front office trade him because he's going to be problems. And this was earlier in his career. He was early in his career.
And I mean, he's great. Don't get me wrong, but it's just like Le'Veon Bell. It gets to the point where you're getting replaced by some other guys. If you're just going to ask for more money and more responsibility and cry and whine about everything, just trade them and get some draft capital out of them.
And when you get that big money, you have to play that like you're worth that.
You got to play like big money, exactly. It's just like Le'Veon Bell. He's been one of the best running backs in the league, but everybody's trying to say, well, they missed the playoffs because they didn't have Le'Veon Bell. That's not true at all. They missed the playoffs more than anything because Big Ben just threw interceptions in the red zone.
And you lost to the Raiders.
That doesn't have anything to do with Le'Veon Bell. And the reason why is because, one, James Conner came in and played every bit as well as Le'Veon Bell would have played this year. And then James Conner gets hurt, and then Jalen Samuels, a rookie, comes in, and he plays as well as Le'Veon Bell or James Conner would have played. The only difference between James Conner and Le'Veon Bell this year was James Conner was more prone to fumbles than Le'Veon Bell has been throughout his career.
But this is only his second year in the league, and he can make that argument a little bit.
You think that paying Le'Veon Bell like $20 million of guaranteed money is going to get us one more win? I don't believe so, because Le'Veon Bell's been a good running back, but he's never been – he's the only time I can remember that he's the reason we won the game was we played the Chargers, I think it was 2014, and they put him in the Wildcat at the very end of the game, just last play of the game. They took a snap. It looked like they had stopped him, and he second-efforted, got into the end zone. We beat the Chargers on a walk-off touchdown. That's the only time I can ever remember Le'Veon Bell just literally winning us the game. It's always been Big Ben, Brown, with Bell. It's always been all three of them and the offensive line playing well. It's never been Bell carrying us to a win like Ezekiel Elliott, carrying the Cowboys to a win. It's never been that way. So Antonio Brown's still on the roster, and everybody's talking about, well, you're going to have some dead cap space this year. You got this much in dead cap money. Well, you're either going to have Antonio Brown that doesn't want to play for you on the team, spending more money on him, or you're going to have 1 year of dead cap money and probably at least one first-round pick, if not two, or one first-round and one second-round pick. Get rid of him. Get some trade capital. You've already got a number one receiver. You don't have to have two number one receivers on the team.
Obviously, it's not working.
Because that's why they're called number one. Because you have a number one, a number two, a number three, and a tight end on the team. You don't need two number ones on the team because it usually just does not work out.
Especially if they have a bad personality.
And listen, Big Ben's not going to go anywhere till he retires. He's a Steeler for life. They're not going to get rid of him. No. It don't matter if he throws 15 touchdowns and 25 interceptions next year.
And they're not going to fire Mike Tomlin.
And they're not going to fire Mike Tomlin, and everybody thinks, Mike Tomlin needs to go.
Who are you going to replace him with?
And it's like, and I used to I used to get so mad because they would lose these games to teams like the Raiders until Chris Carter put it as plainly as you can put it. Because
this is true.
Like he says, I've been in a lot of locker rooms. I played in the NFL for a long time, and he's got a gold jacket. Chris Carter said it best when he said, the big games the coach gets you ready for.
Yep.
The smaller games where you're supposed to win, the players have to get themselves ready to play that game. You have to. I mean, these are
grown men. These
are grown men.
They're not 18 to 22-year-olds.
That you got to get out there and whoop the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders are, a 3-win team probably at that point. You got to know that you got to get out there and just whoop the Raiders because you should. You don't go out there and lose to them, and that's not Tomlin's fault. So it's whatever. I don't know why anybody thinks that Tomlin needs to be fired. He's never had a season under 8-8 his entire year.
Yep.
That's even like Andy Reid. Andy Reid shouldn't have been fired from Philadelphia, and he had still had two or three losing seasons. But I mean, obviously he went to the playoffs a lot, and even went to a Super Bowl. But he had only had like 3 losing seasons in his entire Philadelphia run, and they got rid of him. And people are asking for Mike Tomlin to be fired, and he's never had a losing season. He's never even been 7-9. It's 8-8 his worst. That guy is a coach, and he's got a Super Bowl ring, and that's bought him a lot of time with Pittsburgh. A Super Bowl ring buys you a whole lot of time because you got to just be terrible for them to get rid of you after you got a ring. And Tomlin's got a ring. He went to another one, where we lost to Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the greatest talents at quarterback of this generation, if not the greatest talent at quarterback this generation. And Clay Matthews was on the defensive side of the ball in his second year. So we lost that Super Bowl, but Tomlin's bought himself a lot of time. And listen, Mike Tomlin is a great football coach. And I said it a few years ago. I don't know if I'd still say it today, but a few years ago, I named off my top 5 head coaches at NFL or college. Mike Tomlin made that list as a top 5 coach in the profession.
He is.
Because he is the man. I mean, and, if I could go to a coaching clinic of his, I would love that. But, long story short, AB, they need to get trade capital for AB, let Juju be the number one receiver, and just, and go on. trade him to the 49ers because that's apparently Jerry Rice said that's where AB wants to be because they're close. Let him go to the Niners. Let the Niners win a Super Bowl with him. Let him get a ring. Let Jimmy Garoppolo come back from injury and
we like
throw
those
a bunch
guys
of touchdowns to him.
Kyle Shanahan.
I like Kyle
John
Shanahan.
Lynch.
Love John Lynch at GM. And I like Jimmy Garoppolo, and I really hope he succeeds, because I think he got a raw deal in New England with Robert Kraft and all them. I don't care, I don't care if as the legend of Tom Brady or not, Jimmy Garoppolo got a raw deal out of that situation. Robert Kraft making Bill Belichick trade him. Bill Belichick wasn't going to get rid of Garoppolo was the backup option. He wanted to get rid of Brady, and people were trying to act like he didn't really want to get rid of Brady. Bill Belichick, he's the general manager of that team. He wanted to get rid of Brady. He wanted to get rid of Brady, get some draft capital for him because somebody would pay a first-round pick to put Brady on their team easily. He wanted to get some draft capital for him and roll with Jimmy G is what he wanted to do. And he got overruled on that. Jimmy G got a raw deal out of it. But you know what? He also just got paid. And, hopefully he'll come back from his injury and just be great next year. He's got a guy, George Kittle, a good tight end that's going to become a big weapon for him.
Yeah, he broke the all-time record for receiving yards by tight end.
And if they get Antonio Brown, that would be completely awesome. They'll have weapons and they'll have an offensive line there. Having a defense that's getting built up, they'll be a real contender.
So moving on, we can knock out two birds with one stone with this one. College football playoffs suck, and will the game ever slow down and go back under center? I think they do suck, and I wish the game would go back under center.
Yep, that's exactly how I am. The college football playoff sucks. I don't care what anybody else thinks. Because if you get 4 in there, everybody's going to complain about why 5 and 6 didn't get in.
You complain about 2 in the BCS system.
Yep, because nobody else could get in.
I'm sure before that time they complained about the split national champion.
Oh, yeah, and that's like Joel Klatt tried to say. He's like, you would prefer that? And I was like, honestly, I don't care. I would much rather go back to split national champs. And, if you had to split national champs between AP and UPI and, just go on about it and not have the playoff. I would even prefer that. But the BCS system, the only time that the BCS didn't have an outright national champion was 2003, where LSU and USC were both recognized as national champs. That was the only year that the BCS didn't have an outright national champ. Now, sure, people complained about, 2008, 2009 or whatever. Why is it Boise State in the national championship game? Well, probably because they're Boise State, for one. But the BCS, except for 2003, always had a consensus national champion. I would love to go back to the BCS because I hate the college football playoff. I hate the fact that, you work all this time and it diminishes the conference championship, where the conference championship is a game that you really just have to survive with no injuries if you're a playoff football team. And then, if you're a team like Auburn, who was, up there and all they had to do was beat Georgia to get in, they lose, all of a sudden Georgia's in, and the team that they just beat, Alabama's in 2017. I don't think that the college football playoff is really fair, and I don't think expanding it makes it any better.
No, expanding it diminishes everything.
Expanding it to 8.
It diminishes, yes.
Honestly, expanding it to 8, you may put one more team that deserved to be in it. Or you're going to have 3 friggin' teams there in 6 through 8 that did not deserve to be in that playoff playing for a national title.
Even at 6 teams, you're still going to have the same.
And even at 6 teams, you're probably going to have that 6 team that really did not deserve. So
you're going to have a team that got blown out by 28. Remember, we're talking about Georgia because everybody said Georgia should be in the playoff over Notre Dame.
Yeah, Georgia should be in the playoff over a 12-win undefeated Notre Dame team that had beat Michigan at the beginning of the year, beat 4 or 5 top 25 teams, and I think they only played 2 or I think they only played like 3 teams that were not Power 5 football teams. They played Navy, who was not very good this year, but Navy's, under Ken Niumatalolo, their head coach, they've always been a decent football team.
And they had beat Army for so long.
This is the first year that they were just not good in a long time. They've always been a pretty good team. You had Ball State, which is not a very good team that, took them down to the wire. And then, I think they had like one more team. They're contractually obligated to play 4 or 5 ACC games every year. They always play Michigan every season.
And this is the first year they haven't played Clemson in a while, I think, too.
they play USC at the end of every year, which was USC that great this year? No, but they've always usually been a 10-win team.
Yeah.
They're a college football blue blood. They have to play Notre Dame, and USC has to play at the end of every year for the Jeweled Shillelagh.
So if you take,
So how do you take that team that went 12-0 with a schedule that maybe Bama and Georgia could run through, but you can't diminish their success just because they're not
talented.
they're not every team would just run over them. Well, they might not have beaten any of the other top 5 of the top 6 teams. They might not have beaten anybody or gotten close. But you cannot diminish their success like that. And everybody's going to, there might be people listening to it that are like, well, you're trying to use that argument. Well, what about UCF? Well, UCF don't play hardly any Power 5 teams at all.
No.
They don't play anybody.
And they just turn down a deal with Florida.
They play maybe one top 25 team every year. Notre Dame played 4, including Michigan, who was one of the top teams in the nation by the end of the year that they had beaten in the first game. And then you got like 3 or 4 other top 25 teams. You've only got 3, group of 5 opponents that you've even played against. No Division I AA teams like even Alabama and Auburn does.
And Clemson does too.
And Clemson does it too. They play
Georgia does too.
One Division I AA team a year. Notre Dame didn't have any of them.
And Georgia lost. And so you want to put a team that on the biggest stage in their biggest games got blown out by
twice.
By 20. I think it was 20 or 28.
They lost by 20 to LSU,
and then
they got beat by
blew
Alabama.
A 14-point lead in the SEC championship game, and then got just manhandled. The score was not indicative of what the game actually was like. Got manhandled by Texas. So that argument is dumb.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't agree with that. And there's a lot of people out there that I have a lot of respect for in the football world that did not think Notre Dame should have been in, and we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that because you can't take away somebody that went 12-0 and only played 3 group of 5 teams and the rest were Power 5 opponents. You cannot diminish their success like that and just say, well, you're 12-0, but since you're not in a conference, never mind, because they contractually play 5 ACC games, and then you got to play USC and Michigan, who are the blue bloods of their conference. I mean, come on. How simple can I make it for you? I mean, they don't have to be in a conference. They play enough teams that are in conferences in the Power 5 year in and year out, and enough college football blue bloods.
They played Georgia last year.
Exactly. They play enough college football blue bloods that they don't have to be in a conference. They do that. They're not in a conference because they have a deal with NBC that's televises all their games. They don't have to have the revenue from the conference in football because they are they're still a premier blue blood college football team. So they don't need to join a conference, and there's no reason for them to. And I don't think that any of these athletic directors that think Notre Dame has to join a conference, they don't have to join a conference. They don't have to do anything. I mean, they went 12-0 on a schedule where they only played 3 group of 5 teams. You cannot diminish their success like that. I don't care if they got beat 50-0 by Clemson. You cannot diminish their success through the regular season.
And I want to point out in the Cotton Bowl, when Clemson or Notre Dame pressured Trevor Lawrence, he went 2 for 6 and 17 yards.
Yep, and they just stopped. They just did not pressure him most of the night. Just let him pick them apart.
But that's neither here or there.
But as far as the game, thinking hoping that the game will slow down, I really don't know if it will.
I don't think it will either.
See, the thing is that's why I love high school ball so much. High school ball is still so much about different offenses and X's and O's and different defenses. You still see a lot of that old awesome stuff like the 5-2 formation on defense, and you even see some teams in the nation run still single wing offenses and Notre Dame box formations and power T. Johnson High School even ran. I forgot what their head coach used to be. That y'all played him y'all senior year. Mm-hmm. He would run power T formation. I thought that was cool. He would run wishbone and all that stuff. I love those old formations, and that's why I love high school ball so much. Is because a lot of these teams that don't have as much speed or anything and can't just come out and shotgun and throw the ball everywhere, they'll line up in these heavy wishbone and Notre Dame box formations and just run the ball, and that's awesome.
And I appreciate that. That's I was, when I sent you the highlights of the 2011 Bama Georgia Southern game,
Yeah.
That was just awesome.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's cool.
I mean, I was watching our high school or my freshman year. That's what we ran was we ran the option. That was cool seeing that.
Yeah. It's like, we ran the veer at
Yeah,
DAR,
yeah.
and, it's like I remember we went up against Fairview my junior year, and their game plan was they ran a 6-man front to stop us. I think that's cool. Like, I love that. Now I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying that I love every game to be 6-3 and there's no offense at all.
No, because watching the Rams Chief game, that was probably most exciting game that I've watched.
I mean, it's exciting, but so I'm not saying that I want every game to be, a field goal to nothing, but I'm tired of seeing every game has got a basketball score because you cannot play defense anymore.
Yeah.
The targeting rule, I'm fine with. The targeting rule, I think, is a good overall rule,
players.
And the fact that you can go back and review it is a good rule. So it's not targeting that I'm worried about at all. I'm worried about pass interference. Pass interference, you cannot touch a receiver without getting pass interference.
And
It cannot look like anything happened on that play or you get flagged for pass interference. And the even bigger thing that we always talk about in the NFL, it being a spot foul is the most ridiculous thing on the face of the planet, because you're stressing, because you're making it to where every offense can just say, well, if it's 3rd and 25 here, let's just run a fly route, and maybe this corner will just be stupid and make a mistake and accidentally tangle his feet up, and then they'll throw the flag and it'll be a spot foul. We'll have it at the 1-yard line.
Yep.
That's not fair.
Even in you can go all the way down to high school, because when DAR was when they hosted the playoff game, it was like 4th and 6, and they threw I think it was just all verts to the end zone, and it was like the ball's only to 40, and Will Bailey had the arm to do it, and I told Ryan Van Winkle, he was sitting with me, and they didn't do. I don't think they did that. I think they it wasn't what I had just said, but I said, why didn't they just run all verts and throw it in the end zone, because a pass interference call would have been a first down.
Yeah, exactly. It's a first down.
And I think that play kind of got them out of the game, and then it was Aniana from then on out.
And that's the thing. Like, pass interference being 15-yard penalty and automatic first down is already bad enough, because you give them the automatic first down. I think it should just be a 15-yard penalty, and if it's like 3rd and 25, it just needs to be 3rd and 10.
Yep.
So that's bad enough that it has to be an automatic first down. But in the NFL, it's atrocious. It is the worst.
Should not be a spot
That's
foul.
the worst penalty ever, that it's a spot foul. That is ridiculous. And they need to change that, but nobody ever talks about changing that spot foul rule. That's the worst rule in all of sports at this point, is the NFL pass interference rule. And I know why the NFL and why college football are doing all these rules, because they want to see these exciting 50 to 40 games that everybody's viewing.
Viewers.
That's why we sit and have to watch, advertisements all the time. I'm at the point where football is slowed down so much by advertisements that I would rather us, NFL teams just be like soccer teams and just put advertisements on their jerseys, because then we could just watch the game the entire time and not have to worry about, first down, runs the ball, gets a 2-yard gain. We're going to go to commercial. We'll be right back. They go to a commercial after every injury. They go to a commercial, on right before the punt on 4th down. They go to a commercial after the punt on 4th down. They go to a commercial after you kick the field goal. They go to a commercial after you kick after you score the touchdown, before you kick the extra point. Then they come back from commercial, kick the extra point, and then you go to commercial again. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. It's gotten absolutely stupid that you got to sit and watch 4 hours, and you're only watching like 2 hours of football, really in a 4-hour time span because of all the commercials. I'd just rather it be that way at the point. But I don't think football will slow down, because the casual football fans are too caught up in, well, I want it to be a 55 to 45 game, like Jessica's mother is. We're Alabama fans. Jessica's mother's always like, I just want to see a good game. And I'm like, no, I want to see Alabama kill everybody.
I want it to be 66 to nothing.
I don't want to see Alabama compete with anybody. I want nobody competing with Alabama. But I don't want to see these exciting games at the cost of the integrity of the sport.
No, because
Like-
that's what it's doing. And even with the CFP, and they talk about expanding, and they probably will expand after this contract is up. It takes away, like you said, the integrity of the sport, and they play so many games in the high school level. I mean, they play 10 games, and then they go into the playoffs, and then in the NFL they do the same thing. So even in the FCS, they play
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
play a big a bunch.
I mean,
of
they
playoff
play
games.
a bunch, and
So
that's like Jason Whitlock said, and I don't agree with Jason Whitlock on much at all, but I really agree with him on this point. College football, especially, is just exploiting, and they're getting more games out of these athletes that they don't pay. And
that's absolutely
I understand that they get scholarships on one hand, they do get full rides to a lot of these prestigious universities, but on the other hand, when you see how much money college football is making and the programs are making off these kids,
in the school, like in the tuition's still the same price, and the tuition's going up.
Just a full ride is, when they're selling jerseys that don't have your name on them, but it's your number and everybody knows it's you, and that's the reason why they're wearing it.
Yeah, like the
and
8 and 22 jerseys in the first championship.
Exactly, and now you got the 13 jerseys that are making their ways around. Yeah, that's just worth a regular college education. I mean, think about it, guys.
You can get a regular college education with at a community college and at a local state school.
Exactly. That's the thing. People just say, well, they do get paid. They get full rides to college.
No, that's not true. Look how much money that like Texas and Bama make every year.
So, I mean, even if your tuition and fees and everything are $20,000 a year, so all the money that they make off college football is only worth $20,000 a year to these kids.
Yeah.
$20,000 a year ain't a whole lot. Now, in a state like Alabama, you can survive pretty well off $20,000 a year,
especially if you live at home and you're a college student.
Yeah, exactly. But all the money that these college football programs and college football in general and the NCAA makes off of college football, and it's only worth $20,000 a year. You got some priorities that are messed up there.
All right. So, do you think Phillip Rivers will be a future Hall of Famer without a ring? Because at this point, I don't think he's going to win one.
Not a first ballot Hall of Famer, but he will be in the Hall of Fame, and the reason being is because he's got the numbers to back it up. He's had the numbers. He's been a very impressive quarterback over his career.
He's got a weird throwing motion.
He's got one of the oddest throwing motions ever.
But he's a local boy, and that's one of the reasons I'm a fan of him. And he's a fierce competitor.
Absolutely.
He's got the best trash talking in the game.
He's one of the lesser quarterbacks, or there's been lesser quarterbacks that have made the Hall of Fame than him. He'll definitely be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's the first ballot guy because that lack of a ring is going to hurt him as far as being a first ballot guy.
But it doesn't matter if you're a third or a first. You've still got the gold jacket.
You still made it. There's not very many. The proportion of players that have played in the NFL compared to Hall of Famers it's a huge disproportion.
And that's why it meant so much, like Chris Carter and Shannon Sharp.
Exactly. I mean, it means a whole lot to those guys. And so he'll get his jacket. He just will not get it in the first ballot because it's not going to be like Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a first ballot guy. He's going on there.
Peyton Manning, the first ballot.
Peyton Manning, first ballot. Tom Brady will be a first ballot. Tom Brady, they may not even have a ballot for him. Like anybody would be stupid not to vote him on the first ballot. Because heck, even Brett Favre was a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Brett Favre only has one Super Bowl ring. And I think, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, he only played in 2 Super Bowls. He played in '96 and won it. Played in '97 and lost to John Elway. Obviously had a great career as far as throwing for yards and touchdowns, but he also threw a whole lot of interceptions, 336 of them throughout his career.
That's a lot of picks.
That's a lot of picks. But,
excuse me.
He will be in the Hall of Fame. He's just not a first ballot Hall of Famer. On the other hand, Drew Brees only has 1 Super Bowl ring. He's a first ballot guy. People do not understand how great Drew Brees has been over his career.
Not to mention the record that he broke this year, the all-time leading passer yard. Was it all-time passing yards that he broke?
I think something like that.
They broke it against the Redskins.
And I mean, the guy has thrown there's not very many people. I think there's only like a handful of people that have thrown for 5,000 yards. Drew Brees has done it like 4 or 5 times at this point. Drew Brees is a monster.
And he's not very tall either.
And he's not very tall.
And he's very athletic to be playing. He's 40. Tom Brady's 41, and athletically they are different people, but and the way they've taken care of their bodies is amazing.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
They're physically, I think Breeze has got the edge on him. Not height, but just the way he moves around and stuff. Which Tom Brady's never been that guy, like the worst 40 time in the combine ever. And it's not a knock at Tom Brady. That's just the way he was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Breeze has always been a little bit more mobile, and Breeze has been just an excellent quarterback over his career. But it's like Big Ben. Big Ben's a first ballot guy in my opinion.
Yeah.
Not everybody has to have a ring to be a first ballot guy. Randy Moss doesn't have a ring,
but he's like the
greatest
receiver.
Behind, if there wasn't a guy named Jerry Rice that existed, Randy Moss would be the greatest of all time. Randy Moss was incredible. That's why he got in, right off the bat. Chris Carter doesn't have a Super Bowl ring, but Chris Carter was incredible.
Yep.
Now I don't know, and I don't remember if Chris Carter was a first ballot guy either. But Phillip Rivers won't be a first ballot guy just because he doesn't have that ring. He's not going to get afforded that like Ben Roethlisberger is. But then again, Eli Manning has 2 rings, and he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer because he's not even been anywhere near it. He just happened upon 2 seasons where they just happened to win it. I mean, there's not even really an explanation for the Giants' 2 Super Bowl wins under Eli. There's not an explanation for it.
Probably just like how the Bama 15-0 teams will never happen. There probably will never be another 17-0 team.
Exactly. So, at the end of the day, Rivers will be in the Hall of Fame one day. He will not be a first ballot guy though, just because lacking that ring is going to hurt him.
Speaking of Hall of Fame, Bama Hall of Fame, Jalen Hurts to OU.
Jalen Hurts to OU. It's a good decision for him. I don't like OU, so I really wish he would have went somewhere else. But I do have to cheer for him regardless.
He's done so much for the program. He's just
Lincoln Riley will know what to do with him. He's
absolutely.
He's not going to turn him into a guy that's going to throw for 50 touchdowns. I can almost promise you that. But they will maneuver him offensively in such a way where he will have a great year.
And too, like he wants to play at the next level, so he's doing everything he can to make himself a better thrower. And obviously, going to Oklahoma you've taken 2 transfer quarterbacks that were 6 feet and under.
And turned them into
Heisman Trophy
winners.
And had 2 arguably the best college football seasons ever.
Exactly.
Back-to-back years.
Absolutely.
So and 2, the way the personality Jalen has, and that whole locker room will congregate around
absolutely.
him.
And he is a great dude. But everybody says that. Everybody knows that. Auburn fans cheer for Jalen Hurts. That's how
Tennessee fans.
That's how popular and likable this guy is.
And he couldn't.
But the thing is at the same time, not to take anything away from Jalen, but Tua is every bit as high character guy as Jalen is.
Absolutely.
And so that's what irritates me. That I understand everybody loves Jalen. I love Jalen, but this whole we're going to regret losing him and Tua just has all of a sudden become awful to Alabama fans. It's sickening, and it tears my stomach up having to hear some of the stuff that these stupid Alabama fans have to say on, when Saturdays Down South, the Alabama Crimson Tide page posts something, they're always like, well, we're going to regret losing Jalen because Tua just don't know Tua obviously don't know what he's doing. 48 total touchdowns this entire year. He obviously doesn't know anything.
As a first-year starter.
As a first-year starter, he obviously doesn't know what he's doing. He obviously didn't come in and win us the national championship game last year.
Yeah, and he obviously wasn't the number 1 dual-threat quarterback in his class coming out of high school and broke Marcus Mariota's records in Hawaii.
Before we cut this thing off, I'm just going to let everybody know, I don't care if it's just been 1 year and, a small sample size from his freshman year. Tua already is the greatest quarterback that's ever played at Alabama by college accolades. He has blown up any records passing wise and total touchdown and total yards wise that Alabama's ever seen, because Jalen Hurts owned the records and Tua destroyed them. I mean, 12 more. He had 12 more touchdowns than Jalen Hurts had. Total touchdowns than Jalen Hurts had as I think as a
Be a sophomore.
No, I think it was a true freshman when he had 36 total touchdowns. Jalen Hurts had them in 2016. And Tua in his first year of starting shatters that by 12 touchdowns. The total yards record was Blake Sims.
Mm-hmm.
He had somewhere a little bit north of 3,800. Tua had well over 4,000 total yards this year. Tua has shattered. I mean, Tua either set or was close to setting that the quarterback rating record, which was in the 200s, which was unheard of 10 years ago. I mean, Tua's that guy. I mean, he is special. I mean, a special talent and a special
Trent
guy.
Dilford said he was special.
And he's the best. I mean, he's the best quarterback.
And had he not got hurt, Trent Dilford would have been correct with him winning a Heisman.
Yeah, exactly. And nobody can say for sure that Tua will just be drafted and become, a stud in the NFL. Nobody can say that for sure because it's not happened yet. But listen, already in just 1 year, Tua is the best quarterback that's ever played at Alabama by college accolades.
Yep.
I understand that Joe Namath played there. I understand Ken Stabler's played there.
Bart Starr.
I understand Bart Starr's played there. But
the game was different.
Listen,
and it's unfair to put those players in today's game and vice versa.
But by accolades, I mean, Tua is the best by far.
All right, so I was watching it was some like draft day special with Saquon Barkley and Bradley Chubb the other day, and it's like an hour long. And by the way, those are two great people, and it's just it's funny because when Bradley Chubb, this is the next topic. Bradley Chubb had his pro day. The NFL scouts put him through a workout he did not expect, and so Bill Belichick was there, and he was like coaching him through these workouts and like showing him some moves and stuff. But it was funny because Belichick's like, it was nice meeting. He's like, we're not going to be able to even get you. We picked 31 overall, but it's nice to meet you.
I love some of those Belichick quotes. My favorite one is when this girl asked him if he was averse to having a feature back in his offense, and he goes, "You mean when Corey Dillon ran for 1,600 yards, would I be against that?" Yeah, I don't think so.
I love Belichick. I mean, he is.
I think he's just hilarious. I mean, just his dry humor, and everybody's like, you played this Manning team like 10 times over your career. Is there any kind of common thread that over this time of playing him? And he goes, I guess Manning.
He's great. I mean, he's the greatest head coach of all time in the NFL.
I guess Manning.
We're on to Cincinnati.
I wouldn't say I'm Mona Lisa Vito of the football world. I just love him. He's got some quotables if people would just listen to him. They're so scared of him usually that they don't want to laugh. But, man, he says some funny stuff. I plan on, when I become a teacher, I'm just going to come in one day, like the day Belichick retires, like I'm going to come in the next day at school and just I'm going to, in honor of him, just talk like him all day long. Like I'm just going to show up. I'll go up to my podium and be like, I'm talking like Bill Belichick all day long. So if you expect me to be louder, sorry if I'm yelling. I'm doing it. I mean, totally.
All right. Bama, Clemson. If your son's a D1 prospect, who do you tell him to go to?
Bama, Clemson. If your son's a D1 prospect, who are you telling him to go to?
Because one's a factory, one's a family.
Yeah.
And one's not bad, or one's not better than the other.
They both work. They both are winning lots of games and whatnot.
Or do you tell him to go?
It depends on what kind of parent I am. If I'm wanting a definitive shot at the NFL for my kid, I'm telling him to go to Alabama. But if I want him to be looked after and respected to the highest order, I'm telling him to go to Clemson, honestly, because I know as great as Nick Saban is, and I love Nick Saban, he's a blessing for Alabama, but Nick Saban is not. I mean, he's not the nicest dude when it comes to some of those guys that aren't super talented. I know how he was with some guys that ended up playing down there, and now he tells them like it is. I mean, he's being honest with them, but I know some guys that he's told, he's like, you're not going to play here. I mean, he's like, you're just not going to play. Now you got a spot as a graduate analyst, on the staff whenever you get done graduating or whatever. But he'll tell you like it is. He's like, you're not going to play. But Clemson, Dabo Swinney. Now he probably does the same thing in a way, but it feels like he's just nicer about everything. And so, yeah, if you want your kid just to, if you want to feel like your kid's being looked after, like he's got a second dad, you might want to send him to Clemson. But, if you want him to have a definitive shot at the NFL and definitely become the best at his position and compete with the best people at his position that he's going to compete with, and learn how to become a man pretty much anyway, then you send him to Alabama as well, because Nick Saban will definitely achieve that.
All right, so there was a video the other day I was watching. I've watched it several times, and it just happened to pop up on like the next feed, like the next play. It is Joel Klatt and Colin Cowherd after Bama won the championship last year.
Yeah,
and Colin makes this like noise in this video, and I just wanted you to hear it, and I wanted the audience to hear it as well. And I'm going to play it now. All right, so it might be like 10 seconds of this, but it's Joel Klatt and Colin Cowherd on the herd, and they're talking about the game the night before when Bama won the Natty. So just take a listen.
Now they have Friday night games, which are trap games.
Yeah, a lot of those weeknight games.
Okay, can you explain this to me? How in the did that guy get so open? Okay, you're a former college quarterback. I'm watching that play, and I'm.
How in the gate?
I don't know how I haven't sent you that before, but
it's like Joe Rogan saying, "You got a freaking serious problem, bro."
He was referring. He was referring to when Devontae Smith got open and Tua hit him for the touchdown, and how that safety had started so many games.
Good God!
It's almost like the playoffs thing with the
playoffs with Jim Mora. You talking about playoffs? My favorite thing with Jim Mora though was the diddly poo thing. He goes, "What happened was we got our ass kicked. We didn't do diddly poo offensively." He was like, "We couldn't even run the ball. We sucked." He was like, every time they got the ball, they went down and scored points. It was an absolute horse crap performance.
It's like the national championship game this year. All right, predictions for NFC AFC championship game this weekend.
All right, let's carry it out
and
with
then,
this old deal. This episode will run a lot longer than probably the other ones that are subsequent, but you got to kick it off with we got to
at least show our knowledge.
You got to show the knowledge, and got to clear out all the biases that we have, and got to clear out make sure everybody knows where we stand on certain things. So predictions for NFC championship games that are tomorrow: Rams Saints. I'm going with the Saints on this one. I don't like the Rams' rush defense against Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram. And I like Sean McVay, and I think he is, a great head coach. He's one of the best in the league, even though he's only in his second year. But it feels like he's going to get incrementally better in the playoffs. I just don't think that he can get by.
They're playing in New Orleans.
They're playing in the Superdome. Somebody brought up a stat. In the last 5 years, home teams are undefeated.
Yeah.
In the
no,
NFC,
they're 10-0.
In the championship games. So, I got to go with New Orleans on this one.
Yeah, I think so too. Jared Goff is great, and apparently the Rams can run the ball. Who knew? Like last week, when they just demolished the Cowboys.
It was strange that C.J. Anderson was on the street. I always thought he was a very serviceable running back, but I
the butterball.
Yeah, the butterball.
But I think the Saints will win too. Steve Smith Jr. said today on the NFL Network, he was like, they're making because it's a blood moon tomorrow night, so they're talking about weird things that will happen. he made this like crazy prediction, like 5-7 Saints, I think.
Oh wow.
Hey, he obviously he's not being serious, but he's like, if that happens, I'm winning the lottery. I'm buying a lottery ticket because I'm going to win it because that just happened, and then I'm going to come on the show naked and walk like Eli Phillips.
But yeah, so I got to go with the Saints on that one. I think that the Rams will be a team that will compete.
I just think the Saints
for
are
years
more.
to come.
I think the Saints are a more complete team. Right
Saints
now.
are more complete. They're a team that maybe doesn't have as many mega stars on their team, but they're a team that just plays complete.
They got two good backs, and then
then
Michael
they got a
Thomas,
legend at quarterback.
Michael Thomas is like catching every ball.
Michael Thomas, probably a top 5 receiver in the league. Definitely a top 10, possibly top 5. You know,
if the Saints the Rams hold Michael Thomas to like 50 yards or something.
Yeah, it may get bad for the Saints then. But if they can't, if Michael Thomas gets over 50 yards receiving and Alvin Kamara gets over, 50 yards rushing and 50 yards receiving, it's going to be a bad game for the Rams.
Joseph Smith.
Yeah, the Joseph Smith Army knife. Taysom Hill. And I meant to say, because Joseph Smith wasn't in the Utah War, I meant to say the Brigham Young Army knife, because Brigham Young was, I think, technically in the Utah War. But so I meant to say Brigham Young Army knife, but yeah, the Mormon Army knife.
I like watching Taysom Hill play. It's runs like a 4.4 or 4.3.
He's very fast, and he's big too.
Yeah, and he plays everything. Like, he's blocked kicks.
He was awesome when he was at BYU. He was really a running threat that kind of could throw the ball at times at quarterback, but he used to get hurt with his knees would just die on him.
He said something the other day, and like they were like, how could you say that the post was, how could you say this with a straight face? And he's like, when I played at BYU, and he like caught himself and was trying not to laugh. But he's like, when I played at BYU, the defenses, they kind of helped me and see what we see in the NFL. And everybody's like, how can you say that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I got to go with the Saints in that one. As far as Chiefs Patriots, I don't want to do it because I just feel like it's going to backfire against me, but I cannot bet against the Chiefs at this point. And the reason being is because I understand Tom Brady's greatness, but you are in Arrowhead Stadium. I understand Andy Reid's playoff, but I feel more like the Saints and Chiefs go and play in the Super Bowl, and Andy Reid just chokes in the Super Bowl again. I don't feel like he chokes in the playoffs.
Well, MVP winners always lose the Super Bowl, so...
Exactly. So,
I'm picking the Chiefs, but if the Patriots win, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't definitely be surprised if the Patriots won.
Because I did not expect them to do what they did to San Diego last week.
The Patriots survived the Chiefs at home this year.
Barely.
The Chiefs have them in Arrowhead Stadium.
It's going to be super cold.
A defense that's not very good. Patrick Mahomes, and a team that actually, unlike the Chargers, who just really had Joey Bosa to rush because they just did –
Melvin
they're
Ingram
decimated.
Was getting stonewalled.
I mean, they're decimated by injuries at this point in the year. Unlike them, the Chiefs have not a very good defense overall.
They're
a middling defense, but they've been playing better.
Chris Jones is like the leading
Chris
sack
Jones
leader.
He's been dominating.
He's had a
this year.
sack in every game this year.
Justin Houston still got a step in him left. He's still a good football player.
You got Reggie Ragland.
D Ford is a good outside rusher. Guy that used to play at Auburn. A good outside rusher. He's been coming on definitely. He's always been good, but he's when he's healthy, and he's been coming on this year. Chris Jones has been awesome. He was a guy from Mississippi State.
Yep.
He's been awesome, and Eric Berry's back in that lineup. Eric Berry.
So they did activate him.
Yeah, he should be playing in this game, and because I think he's been back for a few weeks, and that's why this defense has picked up. Is Eric Berry, man? I remember when he played at Tennessee.
I don't think he played
was awesome.
I don't think he played last week.
Now he may not have, but if Eric Berry's back in that game, then it's and
Patrick
they have an interior pass
yes.
rusher from Chris Jones. They got an exterior, outside pass rush from D Ford, and Justin Houston still got a step to get on the outside. Think, if I'm not mistaken, Tamba Hali still plays there, and he's still got a few snaps left in him. So they can actually get after Tom Brady. They probably still won't because Tom Brady never gets friggin' sacked.
Don't know how it happens. And they strip sacked him earlier when they played earlier this year in Week 6.
Yeah. And then you got on offense, they've got a decent offensive line. They're not like super talented.
Well,
but this Damian Williams guy's come on at running back.
Yes, he has.
And
they activated another running back this week. Maybe it was Damian.
Well, Damian Williams wasn't hurt, so
they activated another running back.
Could have been Spencer Ware may be back from injury. I don't
think
know.
They activated him.
Spencer Ware's always been pretty decent, but you got Patty Mahomes, he's dominated this year, absolutely dominated. I mean, over 5,000 yards in his first true year of starting, 50 touchdowns. Man, he's been awesome.
And that's in the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And
he'll win the MVP.
Travis Kelce at tight end is going to be a guy that's going to be hard for the Patriots to cover, but they may double him.
Well, if you do that, then you're taking away men from Tyreek Hill. Do you leave Tyreek Hill open?
Do you leave Tyreek Hill open?
Sammy Watkins.
And if Sammy Watkins is healthy, he's dangerous when he's healthy.
He's a number 3, and he would be a number 1 on most teams.
Exactly. If he was healthy and he didn't get hurt, every time he looks the wrong way, I mean, he would be a number 1 on, the bottom half of the league. He'd be a number 1 receiver.
And then you have the Arrowhead crowd acting.
And then you got Arrowhead. Arrowhead is just a different place to play. I mean, it's a tough place to play. But
I love that chant.
Yeah, absolutely.
North Jackson used to do it every time they destroyed us.
So, I hate going that way because I feel like every time I try to pick somebody to beat the Patriots just end up disappointing me again by winning.
But this is by far the worst Patriots team, I think, under Belichick. It's been the first 5 lost team, I believe.
I mean, it's been a good while since Patriots have been this bad. And my thing was, I was like, if the Patriots get home field throughout the entire playoffs, they'll go back to the Super Bowl. But I was like, if the Patriots don't get home field and the Chiefs get home field throughout the playoffs and they end up playing each other, I don't think the Patriots will get by the Chiefs a second time because it's like Mr. Hunter Holland always used to say, it's hard to beat a good team twice in the same season.
Yes, it is. And a team that should have beat you, they just ran out of time.
Yeah, they just ran out of time. And
Pat only really made one bad decision that entire game, and I think I think if there were 2 picks, and the second one that wasn't, I think one of them wasn't his fault.
Yeah, so got to go with them. Got to go with the Chiefs in this one.
I think the Chiefs will win, but
and then if they go to the Super Bowl, I will honestly say, as much as I like the Chiefs, if Chiefs and Saints go to the Super Bowl like we predicted, the Saints will win the Super Bowl, and the reason being is because it's just an Andy Reid thing. He's always been a great head coach. He's never really won the big one. So if they go and play each other in the Super Bowl, I think the Saints will pull it out.
I'm betting again. I'm with you, but the reason I'm choosing that is because unfortunately, the MVP never wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's just.
Tom,
sometimes that superstitious stuff is realistic in football. Like another thing that I want to talk about real quick is the lack of. We talk about quarterbacks needing to be these super big, tall guys. There is not the quarterbacks that are 6'6" and over. The list of like 6'6" and over throughout even just like since 2000 that have won a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco is like the only one. So. It raises a point. Is there too tall at quarterback? And I think there is. I think 6'6" and above is too tall at quarterback. And somebody said that scientifically their releases end up getting a lot longer because they're so tall, arms are so long that their releases end up just being longer. And those releases just end up, everybody's able to break on that ball in the NFL. And then everybody's like, well, how is a 6'6" quarterback, and over, just all of a sudden spell – doom, but 6'5" quarterbacks like Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger have all been excellent.
The sweet spot.
It might be the sweet spot. It's just there's some superstitious stuff in football, like 60% in college. If you ain't throwing 60% in college, I don't believe that you can be an NFL.
Well, until you can go back to the Heisman winners in college, like the only 3 that I can think of that have won the Heisman and won a national championship is Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, and Jameis Winston.
Yeah, since and
the modern the 2000s.
Yeah,
Tim Tebow won the Heisman.
Times.
They lost their bowl game that year.
Yep.
Troy Smith won the Heisman. They lost the national championship.
Yep, absolutely. Sam Bradford, they lost to Tim Tebow in 2008.
2010.
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, yeah.
Cam Newton won it. Robert Griffin III, they weren't even.
I think they lost their bowl game.
They were 10-3. Now they won the bowl
they
game,
did?
but they just. I mean, they were 10-3, so they weren't really competing for a national title. Johnny Manziel wasn't competing for a national title. Marcus Mariota lost.
Yep.
2015.
That was Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry won it. Yeah,
2016,
2016
Lamar
Lamar Jackson won it. They weren't competing for the
But
title.
they lost to LSU.
Yeah. 2017 Baker Mayfield won it. They lost. And 2018 Murray wins it. They lost. And then before Troy Smith, 05 Reggie Bush, they lost. 04 Matt Leinart, they won. 03 Jason White from Oklahoma won it in 03, and they lost to LSU. 02 Carson Palmer from USC won it, and I don't even think they competed for the national title that year. I could go back even further, but there's not a whole lot of Heisman Trophy guys, especially with it being such a quarterback award. They just don't end up winning it.
Well, the last two, the only two non-quarterbacks were
Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Yep, pretty much. So,
but that's the end of our podcast. Sorry it went on so long.
If you made it this far and listened to all of it, man, I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back very soon. I mean, Super Bowl will be 2 weeks from tomorrow, so who knows? We may have a Super Bowl special.
So thanks for tuning in for the first episode. This is Clint signing off.
And this is Nathan signing off.
And this is the Tennessee Valley Football Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, guys.